Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a walk through the winter that froze an entire country. No, seriously, froze it. Streets vanished. Rivers stopped flowing. Even the milk froze in the bottles before it got to your door. But you're not just hearing about it. You're going to live it. It's late December and you're in a modest British town, let's say somewhere between Birmingham and Boredom. Your breath clouds the kitchen window as you press your face to the glass, watching the garden slowly disappear under a quiet, unthreatening layer of white. Looks peaceful, doesn't it? Like a Christmas card that forgot to include the misery. You pull on your scratchy school jumper, thick socks, and that wool scarf that smells vaguely of the family dog. Outside, the snow squeaks under your boots as you crunch down the garden path. Your fingers are already stinging, and it's only 8 a.m. Thing is, you don't know yet that this is only the beginning. That little flurry yesterday, it's going to turn into a white siege that lasts until March. Over the next few weeks, the snow won't just fall, it will stack, drift, freeze, refreeze, and you'll find yourself measuring it not in inches, but in front doors lost and chickens buried. But today you're just a kid, or maybe not a kid. Maybe you're one of the lucky working folk, trudging through the first signs of something big. The shops still open, the buses still run, the BBC still plays cheery weather reports that say, a spot of snow is expected in the Midlands. A spot. That's rich. Later that night, you lie in bed, huddled beneath every blanket in the house. Your breath fogs in the air above your pillow. The frost on the inside of your window has started forming intricate fern-like patterns, delicate as lace. It's beautiful if you ignore the fact that you can't feel your toes. You think, surely this'll pass. A few cold nights, then the usual soggy British January. Right. Except in the morning, your front step has disappeared. Not under snow, under ice. Solid, glimmering, treacherous ice. You nearly go flying when you step outside with a coal bucket, and when you glance at your neighbour's roof, you see a single pigeon sitting on the chimney, completely still. You swear it's frozen in place. It's easy to laugh now, but back then, that chill had weight. It pressed down on everything. You begin to notice the little things. How the milkman starts coming later, how your mum keeps rubbing her hands together in the kitchen, how the dog refuses to go outside past noon. And just when you think it's a one-off, a blip on the British weather radar, the radio starts whispering words like Arctic flow and long freeze. Not quite panic-inducing, not yet. But the air in the room gets colder when the newsreader says it. Still, you go about your day. You joke about snowball fights and slipping on the pavement. But beneath it all, there's a creeping sense that the cold has come not just to visit, but to stay. By the second week of January, even the jokes start to freeze. You try smiling through it, but the cold has a way of dulling humour, especially when it bites through your gloves and leaves your fingers red and raw. You wake up one morning to find that the water in your bedside glass has turned to slush. Your breath creates its own clouds as you sit up in bed. The room is so cold, the wallpaper feels brittle. Downstairs, your dad's already in the kitchen, wrapped in 2 jumpers, coaxing the fire to life like he's trying to resuscitate a stubborn old friend. He mutters something under his breath about the winter of 47 being bad, but this is different. You don't understand yet, but he's right. That year in 1947 was rough, but this is the coldest winter Britain has seen since 1740. The temperatures are plunging into double negatives, and they're not coming back up anytime soon. The radio crackles with strange reports. Sea spray turning into icicles on fishermen's faces in Kent, and in Wales, someone claims to have baked a potato by setting it next to a plugged-in electric kettle, because the oven wouldn't warm up. In Liverpool, a woman is arrested for breaking into a greenhouse, not to steal anything, but to sit inside with her coat open. You step outside and immediately regret it. The snow no longer crunches. It creaks, like old floorboards under your feet. Even the birds seem reluctant to fly, hopping around in disoriented loops, feathers puffed to absurd proportions. You pass by a bus shelter where two old ladies sit huddled like Dickensian ghosts wrapped in layers of scarves, talking about when winters used to be like this. You want to ask when exactly that was, because no one seems to remember one quite this bad. At school, everything moves slower. The ink in your pen refuses to flow. Your breath fogs over your exercise book, and you can't feel your bum after 20 minutes on the wooden seat. The teachers pretend nothing's wrong, of course. One of them even insists on opening the window for fresh air, and is immediately voted most likely to be thrown into a snowdrift. But it's the little betrayals that sting the most, like how the hot water bottle you fill before bed cools to lukewarm in minutes, or how your mum's breath comes in thin gasps after climbing the stairs. Carrying buckets of coal isn't a joke when the heating's down to one room. You catch her warming socks on the oven door. The dog sleeps under the table with a scarf around his middle. The bathroom mirror develops a permanent frost pattern that makes your reflection look like it's trapped under a glacier. And still, it keeps snowing. Not in flurries now, but in layers. Like the sky's laying down insulation for the end of the world. The postman starts showing up with icicles in his moustache. And in a nearby village, the local paper prints a headline: "Snowman stolen, family outraged." You laugh, sure, but it's the sort of laugh that sticks in your throat a bit, because underneath all the jokes and stiff upper lip stoicism, the truth is taking hold. This winter isn't just cold, it's historic, and it's only getting started. The world has gone white. Not just the streets or the gardens, but everything. You step outside and the silence hits you first. The kind of hush that only comes when snow smothers every surface, every hedge, every car, every rooftop. It's like someone's thrown a thick duvet over the entire country and told it to hush for a while. But beneath that soft blanket there's menace. The snow doesn't melt, it doesn't even shift, it just piles, relentlessly, drifting against doors, swallowing fences whole. That picket gate at the front of your path? Gone. Just a small hump under a flawless stretch of white, and it's not just you. Whole villages begin to vanish beneath it. In Devon, farmers wake up to find their barns buried halfway to the thatch. In Yorkshire, the pub down the road has become a snow bump with a chimney sticking out. And somewhere in Kent there's a phone box entombed entirely in snow, only the tip of the crown visible, like a frosty little beacon. You trudge to the shop and feel like a polar explorer. Every footstep sinks with a crunch, your breath instantly frosting the scarf wrapped over your nose, and it's quiet. Not peaceful, quiet. Suspicious quiet, like the whole world is holding its breath. On the corner, a group of kids tries to make a snowman but gives up halfway through. Turns out snow that's been sitting for 2 weeks is about as pliable as concrete. Instead, they just stick a hat on top of a drift and call it Sir Winston. You can't help but salute as you pass, and then there's the road. Or, well, was the road. It's now more of a suggestion. Somewhere beneath this padded expanse you think there's tarmac. You remember lampposts, you remember curbs. Now it's all one endless white sheet. The cars, of course, have disappeared, buried entirely, like metal fossils waiting to be unearthed by spring. Some folks tie flags to broom handles and jam them into the snowbank so they can remember where their cars used to be. Somewhere, a cheeky radio DJ claims you could ski from Liverpool to London without taking your boots off. People laugh, but quietly, because he might not be wrong. You try to keep spirits up, as everyone does. You throw snowballs, you write rude words in giant letters across the neighbour's roof. only to later regret it when your mum spots it from the bedroom window. You even build a snow fort out back, but it collapses on your cousin and takes 10 minutes to dig him out. He emerges with a grin and one eyebrow completely frozen into place. At night, the whiteness doesn't retreat. It glows under the moonlight, eerily bright. You lie in bed, squinting at the ceiling, because the reflected light from the snow is brighter than your bedside lamp. You begin to dream of snow, of shovels and boots and endless silent roads. And when you wake up, the view from the window is unchanged. If anything, there's more white, more cold. You're beginning to suspect this isn't a winter anymore, it's a siege. By mid-January, you're no longer measuring snowfall in inches, you're measuring it in door frames. You open your front door and hit solid snow. Not a drift, not a bank, just a white wall. You dig, of course. Everyone digs. There's a sort of camaraderie in it now. You and your neighbour bundle like overstuffed turnips, exchanging nods as you both clear paths to nowhere. But every night the snow returns, quietly, unapologetically. You can almost hear it sigh as it piles on again, erasing your effort like a chalkboard wiped clean. One morning, your postman doesn't come. The next day, he shows up on skis. No joke, actual skis. Homemade from 2 fence slats tied on with twine. He hands you 3 soggy letters and a magazine from November. "Sorry," he says, teeth chattering. "Your street's become the Arctic Circle." He gestures toward your neighbour's house, whose front garden is now indistinguishable from an alpine slope. The town begins adapting in strange ways. In the local park, someone sets up a curling rink using bin lids and frozen turkey carcasses. The community centre starts offering snowshoe loans, really just tennis rackets tied to wellies. But hey, they sort of work. Of course, the authorities are doing what they can. Local councils send out ploughs that look like underfed tractors with angry metal mouths. But they can't keep up. The snow falls faster than they can scrape, and often their vehicles get stuck too. Somewhere near Bristol, a snowplough has to be rescued by another snowplough, which promptly also gets stuck. It snowploughs all the way down. The army gets called in, not for a battle, but to help clear train tracks. In Scotland, soldiers dig out a steam train buried up to its chimney. It takes them days. And somewhere in the Lake District, a sheepdog is credited with leading villagers to safety when the main road vanishes under 15 feet of drift. They give him a medal. His name is Chips. Meanwhile, back in your living room, you're starting to notice how the snow affects more than just travel. It's psychological. You feel isolated, trapped. The world outside is uniform, no landmarks, no noise, just that endless white hush, like living inside a snow globe that's been shaken and forgotten on a shelf. Sometimes your parents talk in whispers, worry about groceries, worry about Nan, whose bungalow is halfway up a hill now entirely cut off from the road. There's talk of hiking up there with supplies in a sled, if anyone can find one. And yet, despite it all, there's beauty. At dusk, the snow turns shades of blue and lavender. Trees wear glittering coats of frost that shimmer like chandeliers. The town under moonlight looks like something from a fairy tale, just colder, much colder. There's even a moment when you step outside, breath caught in your throat, and everything is so still you swear you can hear the snow landing. Just landing. 1,000 tiny puffs, like powdered sugar falling from the sky. And for a second the bitterness melts, just a little. Then you slip on the steps, land hard on your backside, and remember that the fairy tale hurts. You'd think the worst of it is outside, but no. The real betrayal happens inside your own home. It starts with a drip, an innocent little tap, tap, tap in the middle of the night. You sit up in the dark, blankets pulled to your chin, and you hear it again. Tap, tap. Then suddenly, splat. You flick on the torch. There's water pooling at the foot of the stairs. But how? You haven't had running water for days. That's when it hits you. The pipes, they've frozen. And now, they're cracking. You stumble into the hallway, breath fogging the torch beam, and stare at the ceiling. The wallpaper bubbles ominously like it's trying to hatch. Then comes the slow rip, and a steady trickle begins to leak down onto the hall table, right onto the pile of unopened mail you swore you'd sought weeks ago. All across Britain, it's the same story. The freeze goes deep. Pipes burst in attics and under floorboards. Water tanks split open like overripe melons. One man in Lancashire wakes up to find an icicle growing from his light socket. You don't even want to know how that ended. Your dad does his best with a paraffin heater and 3 towels, muttering something about wartime spirit as he soaks through his second pair of wool socks. Your mum's in the kitchen trying to warm frozen tins of beans by balancing them on the hob. She calls it domestic engineering. You call it bean roulette. It's not just water that's vanished. Heat has too. You retreat into the one room that still has a working fireplace. Everyone lives there now. Mum, Dad, sister, the dog, and you. Sharing one radiator and every piece of clothing you own. The dog looks permanently confused, wrapped in someone's cardigan and eyeing the fireplace like it owes him money. Outside, chimneys spit smoke into the pale sky, but inside, the heat doesn't stick around. You hold your hands up to the fire, then jam them under your arms the moment you turn away. The walls radiate chill. The floorboards feel like frozen slate. Someone tries to run a bath. It's a laughable idea. The hot tap sputters once, then emits a sad wheeze like it's given up entirely. You consider boiling kettles, but the idea of ferrying 20 of them upstairs in your socks is enough to put that dream to rest. You haven't bathed in days. You've dampened. You've wiped. But a full-on soak? That's become folklore. You begin to feel like some ancient tundra mammal, stinky, layered, and oddly resourceful. In Newcastle, a family reports that their goldfish pond has frozen so solid their son uses it as a tabletop for jigsaw puzzles. In Croydon, a man sets fire to a garden shed just to get warm, forgetting that the shed also contains 20 cans of paint thinner. The result is memorable. Back home, you've taken to sleeping with your coat on. The buttons leave imprints on your face, but it's better than frostbite, which, by the way, your uncle almost gets after a late-night dash to the outside loo. Yes, the loo. Still outside. Still cruel. Still about 20 yards too far in this weather. And the worst part? There's more cold coming. You can feel it in the walls. You'd think, after weeks of snow, your body would adjust, that somehow you'd become cold-proof, like some kind of British penguin. Nope. Because just when you think you've reached peak chill, the temperature drops again. One morning you wake up and the water in the toilet bowl is frozen solid. You stare at it, blinking in disbelief, and then slowly close the lid. That's a tomorrow problem. The hallway feels colder than outside. The stairs creak with frost. You pull on your boots, still damp from yesterday, and feel the heat of your feet flee in protest. You're wearing 2 jumpers, 1 pair of tights under your trousers, and 4 pairs of socks, and it's still not enough. You shuffle to the front window. The frost has grown thicker, branching into delicate shapes. Swirls, feathers, almost like someone etched them in sugar. It would be lovely if it weren't forming inside the glass. And then, just as you're admiring this impromptu ice gallery, you hear it crack. You freeze. Not metaphorically. Physically. Another pipe, this one under the kitchen sink. You rush in, heart pounding, only to find water gushing onto the linoleum like it's trying to start a river. Your dad arrives a beat later with a wrench and a very creative set of curses. You both dive under the sink, slipping around in freezing puddles, desperately trying to shut off the valve before the entire kitchen becomes a skating rink. The dog watches from the hallway, unimpressed. When it's finally off, you sit there on the cold tiles, soaked, shivering, and quietly contemplating how people used to live like this in the 19th century. No central heating, no radiators, no hairdryers pointed at frozen plumbing. Just fire, coal, and pure stubbornness. You're starting to understand Victorian grumpiness on a spiritual level. Down the road, the Thompsons have it worse. Their upstairs pipe burst while they were at work. The ceiling gave way, and now their sitting room has a skylight. Sort of. More of a cold water feature, really. Insurance, delayed, repairs, laughed off. At the grocer's, the ceiling is dripping steadily into a plastic tub labelled Snow Surprise. No one knows what's actually in the tub anymore. A mix of melted ice, despair, and maybe a bit of pickled onion brine. And yet, people adapt. You start laying towels along the baseboards. Your mum tapes bubble wrap to the windows. Your dad invents a device involving a coat hanger, a sock, and a candle to thaw the pipes. Dubious, yes, but it sort of works. Everywhere you look, people are turning into amateur engineers. There's a man in Yorkshire who uses the heat from his television set to warm a pot of stew. In Surrey, a woman writes to the BBC asking if she can insulate her attic with old Beatles albums. The answer, only if. They're not first pressings. But beneath the clever hacks and gallows humour, there's weariness, real fatigue. This kind of cold doesn't just steal heat, it steals energy. You move slower, think slower, even feel slower. Everything becomes an effort. Putting on boots, lighting the fire, finding a towel that isn't already stiff with frost. You begin to dream of things you never used to care about. Warm radiators, steamy showers, even the sound of running water. You lie awake at night, counting ceiling cracks and wondering if the thaw will ever come. And somewhere, deep under the blankets, with socks on your hands and a woolly hat pulled to your nose, you whisper, "Please, just let the pipes hold." You'd think, with everything going on at home, burst pipes, freezing rooms, the loo transforming into a porcelain glacier, you might get a break at school, maybe even a snow day. But no, in true British fashion, the schools remain open, because apparently a bit of snow builds character. So you set off at dawn, scarf wrapped up to your eyes, trudging through drifts higher than your knees. Your school shoes are laughable, wet sponges with laces. You stuff newspaper in them to soak up the ice water. Spoiler, it doesn't work. By the time you reach the front gates, you've lost all feeling in your thighs. Your hands have turned a fashionable shade of purple, and yet the headmaster is there at the door, rosy-cheeked and cheerfully declaring, "Another fine day for learning." You contemplate turning around and hurling yourself into the nearest snowbank. Inside, the classrooms are technically warmer than outside. Technically. As in, there are walls. But warmth, that's debatable. The radiators groan faintly, like old men trying to stand up from a nap. They produce about as much heat as a damp biscuit. You sit at your desk, breath fogging in front of you, fingers too stiff to grip a pencil. The ink in your fountain pen refuses to flow. When you exhale, a thin layer of frost blooms on your exercise book. The teacher insists you remove your coat indoors. This is a betrayal on a spiritual level. You do it, of course, because fear is stronger than frostbite. You try to take notes, but your hands are trembling so much your handwriting looks like ancient runes. Across the aisle, your mate has wrapped a scarf around his head like a desperate desert nomad, only in reverse. The windows are frosted solid. Outside, kids still arrive late, stomping into the hallway with shoes that squelch like wet clay. Some of them look more like mountaineers than students. Someone's wearing ski goggles, someone else has on 2 pairs of trousers. No one questions it. Lunch is a quiet ordeal. The dining hall has the acoustics of a cathedral and the temperature of a meat locker. You eat mashed potatoes that have a thin ice crust on top. The gravy arrives lukewarm and freezes mid-pour. And yet, despite the misery, something strange happens. You laugh. Not always, and not often, but you do. When someone's frozen banana snaps in half like chalk. When the school hamster gets moved into the staff room because it's the only place with real heat. When one of the boys licks a metal stair rail on a dare and, of course, gets stuck. It takes warm water, 3 teachers, and the loudest scream you've ever heard to free him. He earns the nickname Tongue Lad for the rest of the year. Back in the classroom, your breath fogs in slow curls as the teacher tries valiantly to continue the curriculum. You don't remember much about the history lesson, except that you're pretty sure the Tudors didn't have to revise in sub-zero conditions. Then the lights flicker. Once. Twice. Out. A collective groan. No electricity means no overhead projector, no recorded tape lessons, and, crucially, no hope of a space heater sputtering to life. The teacher lights a candle as though this is the Blitz, and carries on. Her nose is red. Her patience is thinner than the soles of your shoes. You rest your cheek on the desk for warmth. It's colder than the floor, and as the candle flickers beside the blackboard, you realise this is going to be a very long winter term. Afternoons at school stretch like frozen treacle. Your brain moves slower, your fingers won't bend, and honestly, you're starting to believe that hypothermia might be sneaking into your Latin homework. The only class that brings any relief is PE, not because it's warm, but because at least it requires movement. You run, you jump, you flail about in the snow-covered field, trying not to fall into slush puddles the size of whales. The teacher insists it builds stamina. You suspect he just wants to watch children suffer. Of course, the gym is no better. The pipes burst last week, so now it smells faintly of mildew and frozen socks. The floor squeaks with each reluctant footfall. You do a few jumping jacks just to feel your toes again. Changing back into your uniform in the freezing locker room is an exercise in both dexterity and despair. You can't tell if you've successfully put on your jumper or just wrapped yourself in a very itchy ghost. You overhear that the sixth formers are trying to heat up pasties using the overhead lights in the library. They haven't succeeded, but the librarian did confiscate one and declare it a danger to books and national morale. At the end of the school day, your coat is still damp from the morning. It's taken on the texture of cardboard. You put it on anyway. Outside, it's already getting dark. The snow glows faintly orange under the street lamps, which flicker like they're also considering calling it quits. The walk home is worse. It always is. The wind's picked up, turning the streets into icy corridors of airborne grit and flurries. You wrap your scarf so tight around your face that you start breathing through a damp wool tunnel. You pass the bakery. It's shut. Again. The sign says closed due to delivery delays. Probably code for our oven froze and we've lost the will to bake. A few doors down, someone's car is just a lumpy mound of snow with a single side mirror sticking out like a flipper. Someone scrawled a smiley face into the windscreen snow. Beneath it, help. At home, your mum greets you with a cup of tea that's been brewing on the stovetop for the better part of a snowstorm. It's lukewarm. You drink it anyway. You sit in front of the fire. Your legs sting as the warmth returns. It's not comforting. It's alarming, like the pins and needles of rejoining the living. The dog sighs dramatically beside you, curled in a nest of towels and general sulk. Dinner is quiet. Mostly because everyone's chewing with extra effort. The sausages are a bit firm. Your mum says they were in the cold cupboard. The cold cupboard is just the pantry now. The fridge hasn't worked in days, but who needs one when your whole house is a walk-in freezer? After dinner, you attempt your homework beside the fire. Your pen leaks. The ink turns sluggish. You give up and just draw little penguins wearing scarves. You're not even being ironic anymore. Your dad tells a story about the winter of 47 again. The one with the cow that got stuck in a snowdrift and emerged 3 days later with icicles on its ears. You've heard it 7 times, but you laugh anyway. Outside, snow taps at the windows. Inside, you huddle closer to the fire. The room smells like wet wool and overcooked potatoes. And despite the cold, the tiredness, and the unmistakable icicle forming on the inside of the loo window, something about it all feels oddly memorable. Like you're living through a story people will still be telling 60 years from now. You wake up in the dark. Not early morning dark, power cut dark. It takes a moment to realise what's missing. The hum, the barely there background noise of the fridge, the tick of the electric clock, the soft gurgle of pipes. Now it's just silence, heavy and still. You grope for your torch. Nothing. The batteries died in the night, so you shuffle out of bed like a bundled ghost, guided by the dim blue haze of snow-filtered moonlight through the frosted window. Downstairs, your dad is already up, wrestling with the fuse box. Not that it matters. The electricity isn't just out in your house, it's out everywhere. Across the street, every window is black. No radios, no lamps, no comforting orange glow from the telly. The entire block has slipped back in time. Your mum lights a candle in the kitchen. It flickers feebly, casting shadows that jitter across the walls. The dog refuses to come out of his blanket cave. You don't blame him. And now comes the grim task of rethinking everything. No kettle, no toaster, no electric cooker. You're back to the gas hob and hope. Your dad fills a pan with snow and sets it on the flame to melt. Breakfast is tea made from icicle water and toast scorched on a bent coat hanger held over the gas ring. It tastes like desperation, but at least it's warm. Across Britain, the grid is groaning. Power stations can't keep up with the demand. Everyone's trying to stay warm at the same time. Kettles, heaters, lights, electric blankets. Too many appliances, too little juice. The system buckles. Rolling blackouts become the new normal. You learn to ration your electricity. When the lights do come on, it's a frantic dash to boil water, toast bread, charge batteries. It feels like prepping for war. You even make lists. Make tea, fill thermos, heat extra blankets in the airing cupboard, wind up the radio if it works. Of course, it rarely works. And then there's the candles. You've never truly appreciated the art of candle placement until now. Too close to the curtain? Fire risk. Too close to your face? Blinding. Not close enough? Might as well be sitting in a coal mine. The one saving grace is the fireplace. You crowd around it like medieval peasants, shoulders hunched, socks steaming. Someone passes around a tin of boiled sweets. You suck on them slowly, like they're priceless treasure. Sugar and heat in one. You learn strange little rituals, heating spoons before using them, laying socks on the oven door, tucking hot potatoes into your coat pockets when you leave the house. The other day, your dad warmed his shaving water by wrapping the kettle in a jumper and yelling at it. Surprisingly, it worked. It becomes clear that electricity isn't just convenience, it's modern life. Without it, your routines unravel. Washing, cooking, listening to the news, even just finding your shoes in the morning. It all becomes a test of patience, cold fingers, and candle wax. You start to notice things. Like how your house creaks differently without the background noise. How much darker true night feels without the hum of street lights. And how, when the power does flicker back on for an hour or two, the sight of the ceiling bulb glowing softly is enough to make you exhale like you've just been saved from drowning. Of course, when the power goes, it doesn't just take the lights with it. It takes your evening too. No TV, no radio, no music, no games unless they're played by candlelight, which makes everything look like a séance. You sit with your family in the flickering orange glow, faces half lit, shadows stretching long on the walls. Someone suggests a game of Monopoly. You groan. You've played Monopoly 7 times this week already, and every time Uncle Peter ends up owning half the board while you sit in jail wrapped in a blanket. Again. So instead, you do something rarer. You talk. Not the casual stuff, real talking. The kind where stories come out that only show up in the dark when everyone's a bit cold, a bit tired, and a bit closer together. Your dad tells you how, during the winter of 47, he and his brother used to slide down frozen streets on tin trays. Your gran tells the one about the time a frozen chimney pot fell clean through a neighbour's roof during a storm. No one was hurt, but the dog never went near that side of the house again. And you? You sit quietly, wrapped in every jumper you own, feeling like you've been dropped into a black and white photograph. A moment suspended in time. Then the candles burn low. The room dims into gold-edged silhouettes. You stretch your legs out toward the fire, now a flickering bed of orange coals. The warmth hits your shins, but your back is still cold. You twist and toast the other side. Human rotisserie. And just when you're about to retreat under a heap of blankets, the lights snap on. It's like magic. Sudden, sharp, brilliant light. You blink, stunned. For a moment no one moves. Then, in a flurry of activity, it's a scramble. Fill the kettle. Turn on the radio. Plug in the battery charger. Check if the immersion heater still works. Yell upstairs that the electricity's back. Your mum starts boiling water like she's fueling a train. You rush to heat up dinner. Again. Half a sausage roll and some cold beans go into a pan like it's a 5-star meal. You don't even care. It's hot food, and that's all that matters. But the window's ticking. You know you've got maybe an hour, maybe 2. Then the darkness will come creeping back like a fog rolling in through the trees. So you savour every moment, every bit of brightness, every ping of the toaster, every hum of the fridge motor. And when the lights finally blink out again, because of course they do, you're almost ready. You've banked the fire, filled the thermos and saved the soup. Still, when the room dims once more and the candle wicks are relit, a little sigh escapes your chest, not from disappointment, just from the weight of it all. You're used to the cold now. You've adapted to it. But this dance with the power, the constant flicker between 1963 and the Stone Age, drains you more than the snow, more than the ice, more than the endless shivering. And as you lie in bed that night under 2 duvets and a coat, you find yourself dreaming about something odd. Not warmth, not even spring, but light. Just a room, fully lit. A switch that works. A ceiling bulb that hums without apology. And maybe, just maybe, a warm bath with steam on the mirror and not a speck of frost in sight. By now, the whole country feels like it's been snap frozen. You step outside your house one morning and realise it's no longer just your street that's buried. It's everywhere. Every town, every road, every train line. It's as if Britain has been tucked under a great gleaming white quilt, and someone lost the instructions for how to lift it. The mail is late. The buses have stopped pretending. Even the birds seem to have given up. You see one robin just sitting on a branch like it's rethinking all its life choices. You head down the street, bundled like a sentient laundry pile, and you notice something odd. There's no sound, no cars, no engines, no footsteps, because no one's out. Just you, your breath curling in the air, and the muffled crunch of your boots in the snow that now reaches past your knees in places. A milk float stands abandoned at the corner, a perfect white dome covering its entire front half. A bottle of frozen milk peeks out from the snowbank beside it, cream risen and frozen out the top, the lid perched on a spike of ice like a party hat. And then, as you make your way toward the train station, hoping, there's some sign of life, you see it. A train. or what remains of it. The engine is barely visible beneath a heavy skin of frost. The windows are iced over. There's no movement, no steam, no sounds, just silence. You walk along the platform where the snow has piled so high it brushes your knees. A single man stands at the far end, staring at the rails like they might unfreeze if he wills it hard enough. Back in town, someone's written, "Still waiting for the 8:40 even" on the station sign with their mittened finger. Underneath, another has scrawled, "Bring soup." You can't help but chuckle, because what else can you do? Even the main roads have disappeared. The local council tried grit, but the grit froze. Tried ploughs, but the ploughs broke. There's word of tractors being stolen in some towns, just so people can dig paths to the shops. But the snow doesn't care. It keeps falling, relentless, soft, quiet. Even the air feels slower, denser. In Devon, someone skis down the high street. In Birmingham, people are using flattened boxes as sleds just to get to work. And somewhere in Cornwall, a man is reported to be commuting via horse. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. It feels possible. That's the kind of winter this is. In your own town, the landscape is unrecognisable. Street signs have vanished. Benches are bumps. Cars are mysterious white humps with side mirrors poking out like curious ears. The playground has become a tundra. Only the very top of the swing set is visible, and even that wears a crown of snow. Someone tries to light a bonfire in the park to melt the path to the shops. It works, until the fire burns down and the wet ash freezes into a glassy slick that topples half the town before noon. Every day becomes a navigation challenge. Is that a curb? A bike rack? Someone's car? One man falls into his own hedge trying to find his front step. He's fine, just annoyed, and very cold. Still, somehow, life keeps inching forward. If it weren't so bone-numbingly cold, it might almost feel magical. Almost. The scale of it is staggering. This isn't just your neighbourhood shivering under a few snowflakes. This is Britain. All of Britain, sunk in cold, buried in silence, frozen to a standstill. Radio bulletins begin listing road closures like football scores. A9, impassable. M1, buried. B roads, forgotten to time. You picture the country from above, a map once green and busy, now white, motionless, dotted with chimney smoke and the occasional poor soul trudging across a field with a sled full of groceries. Even the post has given up pretending. In Wales, a letter arrives 3 weeks late, half frozen and mysteriously opened, as if the envelope itself shivered so hard it cracked. And in parts of Scotland, mail is now delivered by tractor, when they can find one that starts. The trains, those mighty steaming symbols of British pride, have become unreliable at best and laughable at worst. A line out of Kent gets frozen to the rails. A train in Yorkshire disappears under a snowdrift for 2 days. Passengers have to be rescued with blankets and soup. The newspapers love it. Photos appear of commuters wrapped in scarves up to their eyeballs, balancing cups of tea in snowdrifts while waiting for ghost buses that never come. One article claims a man in Norfolk dug a tunnel from his front door to his garden shed. Another insists that someone ice skated to work down the A40. And maybe, just maybe, it's all true. Because that's what it feels like. Surreal. Like the whole country has drifted into some wintry fever dream where nothing moves, nothing works, and nothing warms up. In your own town, things are getting creative. A milkman swaps his float for a sled. Kids pull shopping baskets behind them, clanking full of coal and potatoes. Someone starts offering snow taxis, really just wheelbarrows with cushions, but they're wildly popular. The town hall becomes an emergency station, handing out blankets and tea to anyone whose pipes have burst. You pop in just for the warmth and stay for the biscuits. You never knew a stale custard cream could bring actual joy. But underneath all the jokes and snowball fights, there's tension. People are tired, not just physically, but mentally. The constant planning, rationing, trudging. The never-ending battle with burst pipes, frozen boots, and heating that doesn't heat. It wears on you, makes tempers brittle. One day, your dad snaps when the fire refuses to catch. He throws the entire Sunday paper into the hearth in a flurry of rage. You all watch as it burns far too quickly, leaving nothing but a brief whoosh and a sulky ember. Nobody speaks for a moment, not because you're scared, just tired. Later that evening, someone in the neighbourhood gets a fire, going outside in an old metal drum. A few people gather, some bring sausages on sticks. Someone brings a guitar, hopelessly out of tune from the cold, but no one cares. The music is warm. You sit by the drum fire, hands outstretched, cheeks burning from the contrast between fire and frost. For a moment the snow doesn't feel so oppressive. It just is. And in that strange glow, with snowflakes melting in your eyebrows and smoke in your jumper, you realise this isn't just survival anymore. It's a new rhythm. A frozen, foggy, wildly inconvenient rhythm. But somehow, you're keeping time. The days are getting shorter, and somehow, colder. Just when you think the freeze has peaked, it digs in deeper, like it's testing what's left of your patience. And patience these days is measured in coal. You wake up and hear your dad muttering in the hallway. The coal scuttle is empty. Again. You shuffle downstairs, wrapped in a duvet like a defeated Roman senator, to find your mum already dressed, boots on, scarf knotted tight. She's off to queue at the depot. Coal has become currency. It's more precious than chocolate, than petrol, than biscuits, and that's saying something. The coalman now has the power of a medieval lord. When his lorry rattles down the road, everyone perks up like meerkats. You peek through the curtains, breath fogging the glass, hoping today's the day. The lorry stops 3 doors down. You throw on boots and bolt outside. The queue's already formed. Dozens of people in layers of wool and worry. Everyone stamping their feet, not out of impatience, but because toes are going numb. Some bring thermoses, some bring chairs. One old woman has brought a knitting project and is working furiously in line, needles clacking like castanets. Word spreads quickly. Rations are down. Half a sack per household, maybe less if the lorry's short. The man at the front tries to haggle. My mother's in bed. She's 84. The coalman shrugs, holding the clipboard like a weapon. Mine's 90 and she's queuing in Dundee. You finally get to the front. You hand over your ticket. Yes, a ticket. Because coal now requires paperwork, like you're negotiating for a visa. He eyes your name, scratches something off his list and dumps a small mound into your bag. It's not much. It never is. You nod your thanks. It's the closest thing to a ceremony you'll attend this year. Back home, your dad greets the sack like it's royalty. You light the fire with ceremony. The room slowly shifts from cold grey to glowing orange. Everyone gathers close, like moths. And still, you ration it. You have to. 1 bucket a day, if you're lucky. You learn to bank the fire with ash so it lasts longer. You learn how long coal burns and what burns better. Did you know dried orange peels make a decent supplement? You do now. Some households run out altogether. You hear about a family burning furniture. Not old unloved bits, but chairs, a table leg, even, tragically, the Christmas tree. There's something particularly heartbreaking about watching tinsel melt into a blackened stump. Others get creative. In Sheffield, someone's making fuel bricks out of mashed newspaper. Takes a whole Evening Standard to make one. Burns for 10 minutes and smells like sadness. At school, kids start bringing coal instead of lunch to swap. Got a lump the size of a scone, one brags. I'll trade it for a sausage roll. No one laughs. It's a real offer. You dream of radiators that hum, of boilers that gurgle, of switches that work. But for now, it's just this. A black rock, a small fire, and a family gathered close in a house made of breath and frost. Of course, where there's scarcity, there's scheming. Rumours start to swirl about a bloke 2 streets over who's got extra coal. Not just a few lumps, but a stash. No one's seen it, but someone claims their cousin's friend delivered potatoes to his back door and spotted black gold piled high in the shed. It's probably nonsense. But in a winter like this, gossip burns as hot as coal. You walk past his house every day now, just to check, just to wonder. Elsewhere, desperation takes stranger turns. There's a man in Lancashire who tries burning books. Not for censorship, mind, just heat. Unfortunately, the books are damp, and instead of flames, he gets smoke thick enough to evacuate the house. Someone reports him for witchcraft. Probably a joke. Probably. In town, the coal yard is now manned by 2 people and a policeman. Not because people are rioting, but because one night a man tried to sneak off with a wheelbarrow full of sweepings, which is to say, coal dust, splinters, and a few generous handfuls of pebbles. He almost got away with it too, until the barrow broke a slat and dumped half the load onto the street like a trail of breadcrumbs. Everyone cheered, then helped him scoop it back up. Because honestly, who wouldn't? Back in your own house, rationing has become a science. The fire's allowed on from 5 to 8. No more. You wrap yourself in jumpers and blankets during the day. Hot water bottles are passed around like sacred relics. At night, the whole family sleeps in one room for warmth, lined up like sardines. The dog claims the middle. Of course, every noise in the walls now causes alarm. A creak, could be a pipe, a drip, probably the ceiling again. You get good at identifying cold-related sounds. You develop a 6th sense for drafts. And then there's the queuing. Oh, the queuing. Not just for coal, but for everything. Paraffin, bread, batteries. The high street has become a frozen parade of people waiting in lines, wrapped in layers, barely speaking. Conversations are short and sharp. Any left? Depends. Heard the lorry's stuck in Woking. That again. Even the queuing has hierarchy. You know who gets served first. Old folks, parents with babies, the war veterans, the shopkeepers with patience and shovels. The rest of you wait, and sometimes leave empty-handed. One day, a lorry actually does arrive on time, with fresh coal and extra loaves. The driver's treated like a minor deity. Someone offers him a biscuit. Someone else offers a date. You consider offering your last bar of chocolate. He just smiles and says, "You lot really know how to make a bloke feel important." But there's pride in it too, in the survival, in making it through another week with ingenuity, patience, and a very generous interpretation of what constitutes a heated space. You learn to prize warmth differently, not just in temperature, but in people. A neighbour shares their last briquette with you. Your teacher brings in a kettle to make tea for the students. Someone leaves coal on a doorstep with no note. And you? You carry it all home carefully, wrapped up like treasure. Because in this frozen world where light flickers and frost crawls across your floorboards, a handful of coal feels like the sun itself. It's a Thursday when you hear the impossible. The Thames has frozen. You blink. Surely not the Thames. Not the river that winds through London like a sluggish ancient vein. The one too wide, too deep, too stubborn to ever give in to winter. But it's true. You see the photos in the paper, grainy black and whites of people walking on it. Actual humans, standing on the river like it's a pavement. You half expect to see someone pushing a pram or selling roasted chestnuts. You don't waste time. You bundle up, catch the next bus, miraculously running, and make your way into London. The city is quieter than you've ever known. The usual drone of cars is absent. No pigeons fluttering in Trafalgar Square. Just crunching boots, steaming breath, and the occasional honk from a cab that's been frozen in place since Tuesday. When you reach the riverbank, it's surreal. The Thames isn't flowing. It's not gurgling or rippling or shimmering. It's still. A grey-white stretch, like someone unrolled a carpet made of glass and powdered chalk. Boats sit trapped in place, frozen mid-motion, like someone hit pause. People stand along the edge, speechless. Some are brave or foolish, enough to step out onto the ice. You watch as a boy throws a stone. It clatters. Clatters. That's the Thames. And it made the same sound as a kitchen floor. It hasn't done this since the 1800s. Back then they used to hold frost fairs on it. Actual markets on the ice, complete with tents, ale stands and the occasional row stocks. There was even a printing press out there once, churning out novelty poems like, "This day, this year, the Thames froze clear." You wonder if anyone's thinking of doing that now. Instead, someone set up a little snowman family in the middle of the river. 3 in a row, complete with a carrot nose, a pipe, and a badly tied scarf. A sign hangs off one. Mind the gap. A group of teenagers races across, slipping and laughing. A man in a bowler hat carefully tiptoes, umbrella held out for balance. And over by Blackfriars, a dog refuses to move at all, staring at the ice like it personally insulted him. The authorities naturally are not amused. Loudspeakers along the embankment shout warnings. The ice is unstable. Do not attempt to cross the river. But the British public, chilled to the bone and weary of rules, collectively shrugs. A woman in fur-lined boots mutters, "If I fall in, I'll just freeze into a statue." Quite romantic, really. You take a cautious step onto the edge. It's hard and slick beneath your boots. Your heart pounds. You're standing on the Thames. You half expect a ye-old time ghost to skate past and tip his hat. For a moment you feel like a part of history, not reading it, not studying it, living it. Then a loud crack echoes nearby and everyone freezes, literally and figuratively. Someone screams. A teen scrambles back to the bank, face pale as snow. The ice holds, for now. But the message is clear. This frozen marvel is no playground. It's a relic, a reminder, a brittle miracle that could vanish the moment the sun decides to show its face. You step back onto solid ground, heart racing, toes tingling, and as you walk home, you realise this is a story you'll tell forever. "I stood on the Thames," you'll say, and no one will believe you. The story spreads fast, faster than a thaw ever could. The Thames is frozen. By Friday, it's all anyone talks about. Not the blackouts, not the coal queues, not even the sausages frozen to the butcher's window. No, this is the stuff of legends. Every newspaper runs it. Grainy photos, breathless headlines, jokes about setting up ice rinks and hosting tea parties midstream. One local tabloid even publishes a mock ad. Frost Fair 1963. Bring your skates. Mind the cracks. You'd laugh if it didn't feel so close to the truth. At school, it's the only topic that cuts through the cold. Even the teachers are giddy. One of them recalls a lesson from decades ago, how the Thames froze in 1814 and Londoners roasted a whole ox on the ice. He smiles, stares out the window wistfully and mutters, "Wouldn't mind a roast right about now." You and your friends huddle near the radiators, still cold of course, and imagine your own frost fair. Someone suggests a snowball duel between rival form groups. Someone else wants to sell hot lemonade, which turns out to just be regular lemonade held near a candle. You all know you're just playing make-believe. But in a winter that feels endless, any fantasy will do. Back home, your parents swap their own memories of harsh winters. Your mum remembers walking to school in the fog so thick she once followed a stranger halfway across town before realising he wasn't her brother. Your dad insists he saw icicles growing inside a pub during the war. You believe him. This winter has made the unbelievable feel routine. Even the telly gets involved. News footage shows reporters bundled in scarves, wobbling cautiously on the frozen riverbank. One segment features a poetry reading, some fellow in a beret reciting lines about frost and silence, while his breath fogs up the lens. They cut away before his fingers freeze to the microphone. But amid the novelty, there's a current of worry. Experts warn that the ice could give way at any time, that beneath that solid-looking surface is a very real, very cold river still flowing, quiet, hidden, and ready to break through. Still, the temptation is strong, and not just in London. In Oxford, parts of the Thames are thick enough for bicycles. In Cambridge, someone holds an unofficial ice skating race across the river, won by a lad wearing his sister's pink mittens and unmatched boots. No one minds. He celebrates by falling flat on his face. In your own town, a nearby canal is also frozen. Not as dramatic, perhaps, but still magical. You walk along it in the evenings, breath puffing, hands jammed in your coat pockets. The ice glows blue under the twilight sky. Someone's lit candles in old jam jars along the bank, little flickering beacons that make the night feel gentler. And for once, people are out. Not rushing, not commuting, just walking. Together, slowly, watching their footsteps, sharing smiles, sharing silence. Because something about this frost has shifted things. It's slowed the world just enough for people to see each other again. Maybe that's the strange gift buried under all this snow. Time, stillness, a reminder that even when everything freezes, life doesn't stop. It just changes pace. As you head home beneath the halo of a flickering street lamp, you look up at the sky, clear, star-scattered, vast. And for a moment, the cold doesn't feel so cruel. It feels like history, gently resting on your shoulders. You wouldn't think sheep could vanish. They're big, fuzzy, not exactly known for stealth. And yet, out here in the countryside, they're gone. You're visiting relatives in Yorkshire, or maybe Somerset. It doesn't matter. Everywhere beyond the city limits looks the same now. White fields stretching to the sky, fences buried, hedges reduced to ghostly outlines, barns swallowed whole. And the sheep disappeared. The local farmers call it the white burial. At breakfast, your uncle, who smells faintly of hay and tobacco, tells you how he dug out 3 sheep yesterday using nothing but a spade, a tin of beans, and sheer bloody-mindedness. You're not sure if the beans were lunch or part of the rescue effort. You don't ask. You pull on boots, scarf, your cousin's spare coat, and follow him out into the blinding cold. The drifts are taller than you. In some places they've formed sculpted ridges like miniature snow canyons. You pass the barn, just a sloped lump now, with only the weathercock still visible, spinning madly in the frozen breeze. Armed with sticks, shovels, and a strange sense of optimism, the search begins. Every so often your uncle stops, tilts his head, listens, then, there! You see nothing, just a smooth drift. Then the stick goes in, and hits softness. Not snow. Everyone digs like mad. The snow is dense, packed tight by wind and time, but beneath it, movement. The first sheep emerges in slow motion, blinking, dazed, with a chunk of frost on its nose and an expression of quiet betrayal. It stumbles a bit, then promptly tries to eat the nearest glove. That one's lucky. Others aren't. You find one that didn't make it, curled like a comma, eyes closed, frozen in place. Your uncle removes his cap, doesn't speak, just covers it back over and moves on. The silence out here is heavier, colder. It sits on your coat and seeps into your collar. You help dig. All day. Some sheep come out bleating. Some don't come out at all. And it's not just sheep. Chickens freeze in coops. Cows get trapped in stalls when barn doors freeze shut. In some places, farmers break open feed silos with sledgehammers, their fingers stiff and purple. It's not a gentle countryside anymore. It's war, man versus ice. In a nearby village, someone tries to clear a path using dynamite. It does not go well. In another, the entire parish bands together to dig out a herd trapped in a far-off field. They form a line, a human shovel chain, passing tools and food and blankets along. The vicar brings tea in a bucket. Someone plays a harmonica. It's weirdly cheerful in that bleak British way. By evening you're soaked, aching, and half frozen, but proud. You've saved 4 sheep. That's 4 lives pulled from the snow's grip. Your uncle claps you on the shoulder and hands you a mug of something hot and questionably brown. "Suppose it's a proper winter now, eh?" he says, blowing into his hands. You nod, not because it's warm, but because it's true. Night in the countryside is different. In the city, winter nights hum with leftover light, street lamps, buses, TVs glowing behind windows. But out here, it's black, thick, velvety, frost-laced black, so quiet you can hear your coat rustle as you move. You step outside after dinner, well, after stew heated over a paraffin burner and served in mismatched mugs, and the stars are brutal. Not twinkling gently, not dreamy, sharp, cold, endless. And the snow reflects them back, making it feel like you're walking inside a snow globe full of galaxies. Your boots crunch over the packed snow. In the distance you hear a faint bleating, more sheep, maybe just talking in their sleep, maybe asking why their world turned to ice. Back at the house, your uncle and aunt sit by the fire nursing mugs of tea. The room smells of soot, wet wool and satisfaction. Your cousin's curled up under a quilt, red-nosed and sleepy. The kitchen wall is lined with buckets, one for water, one for scraps, one for indoor thawing. The sink's been frozen for days, so now everything is either melted or bashed open. A frozen cabbage sits on the windowsill like a shrunken head. The fire burns low but steadily. Logs have become precious. So has patience. The radio crackles with news, crops failing, fuel delayed, roads still closed, snow predicted for another week, maybe more. But what gets everyone's attention is the livestock tally. Numbers, cold, sterile numbers. 37 cattle lost in Cumbria, 11,000 sheep feared buried across northern counties. The room goes silent, because you know some of those. Not the exact sheep, maybe, but their cousins. You've seen their wool frozen into jagged dreadlocks. You've heard their panicked, muffled cries from beneath a snowbank. You felt the awful weight of having to dig fast enough with numb fingers and a thudding heart. Farming isn't just a job, it's life. And in a winter like this, it's a fight. The next morning you wake early, the window's frosted in thick white curls. You scrape it clear with your sleeve and look out. The world's still frozen. No surprise there. But something's changed. The neighbours have come. All of them. Dozens, stomping up the lane in thick coats and wellies, carrying shovels, sacks and thermoses. Some are farmers. Some aren't. Doesn't matter. They've come to help. Someone's organised a dig-out. Today, every field will be searched. Every animal found. Or mourned. You grab your scarf, your boots and your sore arms. You join them. You spend the whole day buried in snow, digging for life. It's hard, freezing, sometimes heartbreaking. But there's something strangely joyful about it. Because out here, survival isn't quiet. It's noisy, messy, full of shouting and slipped boots and cups of tea that freeze mid-sip. It's people choosing to show up, again and again, even when the world has turned white and numb. You save a lamb that day, just one. You hold it against your chest, wrapped in your coat, and it's warm and shivering and alive. And somehow, in that moment, so are you. You're finally heading back to the city. And to get there, you do what any reasonable person would do in the winter of 1963. You take the train. Well, you try. The station is a snow-drenched echo of itself. The platform signs are rimmed with frost, the tracks vanish beneath rolling drifts, and there's an eerie quiet as you step onto the platform, your breath puffing in little clouds. A lone bench sits with a perfect mound of snow on it, like it's waiting for someone to sculpt it into a frozen throne. A chalkboard has been updated, delayed, cancelled, and then, blessedly, 9:45 to Paddington expected. Expected, not guaranteed, but it's hope, and you'll take it. You wait 10 minutes, 20, 40. Then around the bend you hear it, a groan, a rattle, a heavy chug. The train arrives, late, covered in snow, moving like a stubborn mammoth, but still, it arrives. You step aboard and immediately understand what delayed really means. The carriage is freezing. People sit huddled in scarves and coats, their breath fogging the windows. The floor is wet with melting snow from hundreds of boots. Someone has lit a candle in a tin, which may or may not be legal. You find a seat beside an elderly woman who's knitting with fingerless gloves. She offers you a boiled sweet and says, "If it gets any colder, I'm putting this scarf on the train itself." You settle in. The journey begins. Slowly. The train lurches through the countryside like it's dragging the weight of winter behind it. Fields blur past, white, silent, blank. Every so often, it stops. Not at a station, just stops. To wait for clearance. You suspect it's actually wait for the tracks to be found. Somewhere near Reading, the conductor walks through with a kettle of hot water and a stack of mugs. He pours tea like a priest performing a sacred rite. People thank him like he's a saint. He nods solemnly and moves on. Then, halfway through the journey, the train stops for real. This time, the silence is different. Not a pause. A halt. You peer out the window. Nothing moves. The sky is lowered into a thick grey ceiling. Snow taps on the glass like it's trying to get in. Someone says we've hit a drift. You wait. 5 minutes, 10, an hour. The temperature in the carriage drops. People stomp their feet. A man takes out a harmonica and plays something mournful. A child in the next row starts crying. Another kid offers them a biscuit, which promptly snaps in half. Frozen. Someone opens the door to check outside, and the cold slams in like a wave. You shrink deeper into your coat. Then, the strangest thing happens. People start talking. Like, really talking. About work. About families. About how their mums are coping without hot water. About how they haven't seen bananas in 2 months. About how their houses now have names for the coldest rooms. We just call the front parlour the North Pole now. Stories start spilling into the carriage like warmth. Laughter crackles through the cold. Someone passes round barley sweets. A woman begins knitting a square for a community scarf. And in that moment, the train is no longer a metal box stuck in the middle of nowhere. It's a lifeboat, floating quietly through a sea of white. 2 hours into the stall and you've accepted it. You're not going anywhere soon. The train has become your new postcode, your seat, your home, the window, your only view. Frost creeps slowly across the glass, drawing patterns like delicate spiderwebs spun by a very cold, very bored artist. Outside, the landscape has blurred into white nothingness. Even the trees wear coats, branches so thick with snow they bow like they're curtsying to winter itself. Inside the carriage, life adapts. A woman pulls out a deck of cards and starts a game of Snap with 2 teenagers. Someone's unwrapped a sandwich, already half frozen, but they chew through it defiantly. A man you could have sworn hadn't spoken in 20 years suddenly comes alive, telling stories of a winter in the 20s where chickens were found roosting in bathtubs just to stay warm. People pass around the local paper, folded and wrinkled. There's a feature on the frozen Thames again. One headline reads, "Is Britain now officially a glacier?" Below it, a cartoon shows the country sliding slowly into the North Sea. A laugh ripples through the carriage, not because it's absurd, but because at this point it feels possible. Then comes a tap on your shoulder. It's the elderly lady beside you. She holds up a crumpled thermos and a hopeful smile. Fancy a splash of cocoa? It's cold, barely a whisper of chocolate, but it's glorious. The conductor returns, this time handing out thin wool blankets with British Rail stamped across them like government-issued hugs. You drape one over your knees and feel like royalty. Then, as quietly as it stopped, the train moves. A shudder, a groan, a low mechanical growl. Someone lets out a cheer that turns into a cough. Another taps on the window like encouraging a stubborn pet. The wheels lurch forward, bite the tracks, and slowly, painfully, you start to inch through the snow-covered world again. You pass fields where sheep dot the white in hunched clumps. Farmhouses billow smoke from tiny chimneys. In one garden, a snowman waves a scarf made of socks. At one point, the train slows beside a station that's nothing more than a hut half submerged in snow. No platform, just a man standing ankle-deep in white, holding a spade like a knight with a very tired dragon to fight. Eventually, hours later, you reach the city, or what's left of it. The buildings are taller, sure, and the roads a bit clearer, but even here the cold rains. Icicles hang from gutters like medieval weapons. Pigeons waddle in tight circles, unsure where to go. Smokestacks pour steam into the sky like exhausted sighs. You disembark stiff-legged and blinking. The platform crunches underfoot. You look back at the train, your frozen lifeboat, and for a moment feel strangely grateful. Because despite everything, the delays, the frostbite, the smell of old socks, there was warmth. Not from the radiators, but from people, strangers who shared cocoa, stories, and silence, who turned a miserable commute into something oddly human. You walk through the station and out into the city. The wind cuts sharp and your breath fogs immediately. You pull your scarf tighter and step forward, boots crunching on salted concrete. And though you've reached your destination, a part of you stays behind, somewhere between Reading and the white horizon, on a train that became a hearth. By now you'd think people would be huddled indoors, quietly surrendering to the cold, but you'd be wrong, because somewhere between week 6 and frostbite-induced madness, something very British starts to happen. We get bored. And bored Brits are dangerous, especially when armed with snow, too much tea, and a complete disregard for common sense. It begins innocently enough. Someone builds a snowman, fairly standard. Carrot nose, coal eyes, scarf. Classic. Then someone else builds 2 snowmen, one holding a sign that says, "Waiting for spring, send biscuits." Then things escalate. In Nottingham, a full snowman family appears overnight. Mum, dad, toddler and a dog made entirely of mashed ice and a frozen sock. The local paper runs a photo with the headline, "Cold Snap, more like a cold clan." A few streets over, a group of university students constructs a 12-foot snow Queen Elizabeth, complete with a sceptre made of a broom and a crown fashioned from icicles and tea bags. Someone drapes her in the Union Jack. A passing vicar blesses it without stopping, and this is just the beginning. Because soon, the whole country is in on it. You pass a snowman with 3 arms holding 2 mugs of tea and a pipe, another with sunglasses and a tiny transistor radio frozen into its chest. And then there's the one someone built on top of a car, as if rising from the bonnet like some kind of winter deity. It even has a name, Sir Frostington of Ford. One house near yours builds a fortress, an actual snow fort with ramparts, a working drawbridge made from an ironing board, and a sign that reads, "No adults unless bringing pudding." Naturally, a snowball war follows. Lines are drawn. Neighbourhoods pick sides. You're conscripted against your will by a 6-year-old wielding a frying pan as a shield. The enemy? The Joneses across the road, who have clearly been preparing since Christmas, judging by the size of their snowball stockpile. You spend the next hour ducking, rolling, hurling, laughing so hard you can't breathe. Someone gets hit in the face. Someone gets hit twice. A truce is negotiated over hot Ribena and custard creams, and suddenly it doesn't feel like the cold has won anymore. Because under all the grey skies and frozen taps, there's life here. Real, ridiculous, joyful life. In Sheffield, a group of dads stages an ice Olympics on a frozen cul-de-sac. Categories include slippery dash, bin-lid curling, and synchronised shivering. The winner gets a crown made of tin foil and half a packet of bourbons. In Devon, a snow sculpting competition produces a life-size snow Dalek, a Snow Beatles tribute band, and one ambitious and slightly terrifying Snow Margaret Thatcher. People are freezing, yes, but they're laughing too. Not because things are fine. They're not. The pipes are still frozen. The power still flickers. Bread is rationed and the cat hasn't forgiven anyone in weeks. But something about a good snowman, or a terrible one, makes it all feel lighter, even if just for a few minutes. So you keep building, keep laughing, because if the weather insists on making everything ridiculous, you might as well return the favour. By the end of February, the country has turned into a frozen art gallery. Snowmen now stand in formation on every street, wobbling, leaning, melting in odd places, but somehow still smiling. One has sunglasses and a pipe. Another has a frying pan for a hat. Outside the post office, someone's made a Snow Queen's guard, complete with a mop for a bearskin. It's already been hugged 17 times. You walk through it all like you're in a strange dream, half sculpture park, half comedy sketch. And then, in your own town square, someone goes too far. They build a 10-foot snowman sitting on a toilet. Yes, a fully sculpted toilet. With a newspaper in hand and the caption carved into the base, "Number 2 is delayed due to weather." The mayor doesn't know whether to be outraged or impressed. The local paper runs it on the front page. The headline, "Frosty makes a splash." That's when the snow pranks begin. Not just snowballs now, full-scale operations. One morning, a teacher at your school arrives to find her car completely encased in ice. Someone had poured water over it every hour for 3 days. It's now a shimmering block of Ford, glistening like an exhibit in a very niche modern art museum. The teacher simply nods, turns around, and walks home. In Manchester, a pair of pranksters freeze their friends' trousers, hang them from a lamppost, and declare them the first flag of the Republic of Freezonia. The local council takes them down, eventually. Meanwhile, in the suburbs, someone begins what will later be referred to as the Great Garden Gnome Displacement. Gnomes from up to 12 houses appear one morning, carefully arranged into a single line across the street, each holding a snowball. No one ever confesses. No one ever will. And yet, in the middle of all this, something happens you didn't expect. People stop being strangers. That grumpy neighbour who never waved, he's now on your team in a late-night snowball siege. The quiet lady who lives 2 floors up. Turns out she's a legend at sculpting snow dogs. You help her build one with a monocle and top hat. It wins most distinguished in the informal contest judged by a 6-year-old. At the bakery, closed for weeks, now reopened with half a menu and a portable heater, the staff have baked snowman buns. They're just jam buns with raisins, but they're warm. You eat yours too quickly and burn your tongue. You don't care. There's talk of throwing a festival, a real one. Music, snow sculpting, the works. Someone even suggests crowning a snow king and queen. Names are passed around, votes taken in jest. You overhear someone say your name, you blush under 3 scarves and pretend to be offended. The night before the event, the square is lit by candles in jars. Strings of fairy lights powered by whatever generator can be begged, borrowed or bribed glow dimly above the ice-covered trees. And you stand there, holding a mug of something hot and vaguely cinnamon-flavoured, surrounded by people who were once just passing faces. Everyone's breath mingles in the air. Laughter bounces off brick walls. Somewhere, someone's playing a violin. Badly, yes, but the notes are bright enough to cut through even the thickest frost. You think, this is it. Not survival, not endurance, community. And in a winter that's taken so much that feels like the one thing it can't freeze. You wouldn't think a pub could freeze, and yet here you are standing in the doorway of the Black Otter staring at a pint of bitter that has developed a crust. Not foam, ice. The landlord shrugs as you gape. It's cold enough to keep beer fresh for a century, he mutters, scraping frost off a bar stool with the back of his hand. You ask if the fireplace is working, he points to it. Inside, 3 logs smoulder politely, producing the sort of heat that might warm a teaspoon from 6 inches away. Welcome to pub culture in the Great Freeze. By now, the pub has become more than just a place to drink. It's a refuge, a gossip mill, a briefing room, a communal living room with questionable upholstery and the permanent scent of pickled eggs. You settle into a corner booth, wrapped in your coat, scarf still on. Everyone else is the same. There's something hilarious about a room full of people drinking ale in mittens. Someone lights a cigarette and watches the smoke freeze mid-air. Someone else insists that exhaling into your pint makes it taste warmer. You try it. It doesn't. The landlord, Bill, always Bill, has adapted. He now keeps the beer mugs inside the fireplace overnight to warm them slightly. The result is uneven. The top of the drink is tepid, the bottom still slush. Doesn't matter. No one's here for the temperature. They're here for the ritual. Each table tells its own story. By the window, 2 pensioners play cribbage with gloves on. One of them has a hot water bottle stuffed under her jumper, which she periodically offers to the losing player for morale. At the bar, a pair of farmers argue about whether sheep huddle better in clockwise or anti-clockwise spirals. Behind you, someone started composing a song titled, "My ale froze solid, but I drank it anyway." The pipes in the ladies' loo are frozen. The gents' is functional, barely. The mirror in the hallway has frost on the inside, but no one complains. They're just glad it's open. Because for many, the pub is the only warmish building left. Homes have gone dark, fires won't light, coal is gone. The church hall is packed, the library has closed its doors, and the train station waiting room now smells faintly of stew and regret. But the pub? Still here, still clinging to life. To fight the cold, someone donates an electric heater, though it works about as well as a candle in a snowstorm. So, a new tactic. Body heat. You all crowd together, scarves off, elbows touching. Laughter comes easier when you're this close to people, and besides, the stories are too good. One man tells of rescuing a fox frozen to his compost bin. Another claims his cat has learned to skate on the icy floor of the kitchen. Someone swears their wife used a curling iron to defrost a chicken. The tales grow taller with every pint and no one minds. Exaggeration is just another layer of insulation. Bill rings the bell for last orders, though nobody moves. He shrugs and pours. Another round. Everyone claps. The walls sweat with candle soot and good cheer. Because even in a winter like this, even when your breath fogs over your glass, even when the seat is cold and the floor is colder, there's something about a pub. It doesn't just keep the cold out, It keeps the world in. By the time it's closing hour, technically, you've forgotten what cold feels like. Not because you're warm, you're absolutely not. Your toes are still numb, and your scarf is slightly damp from where someone spilled lukewarm ale during a toast to our glorious frostbitten island. But there's warmth of a different kind here. The sort that seeps in sideways, through stories, laughter, and the collective agreement that none of us are going anywhere soon. Bill, the landlord, doesn't actually kick anyone out. He just stops serving and begins his slow nightly shuffle, with a tea towel slung over one shoulder, whistling something that might be Greensleeves or might just be the sound of wind through frozen pipes. The fires burned low, reduced now to glowing crumbs. People start layering up again, scarves wound tight, hats pulled low, gloves retrieved from coat pockets with theatrical sighs. A man stands up and stretches with a creak like a folding chair. "Same time tomorrow?" he asks. Everyone nods. Of course, as if there's anywhere else to be. Outside it's quieter than ever. The snow absorbs sound like a thick wool blanket draped over the world. Street lamps cast pools of yellow onto the powder. A fox crosses the road, leaving a perfect trail behind it, tiny paw prints like Morse code in the snow. You walk home slowly. The roads are empty. No cars, no buses. Just your boots and the ghostly outlines of footprints from earlier in the day, already softening at the edges. As you pass your neighbour's house, you notice someone's built another snowman. This one's tiny, only knee-high, but it has a determined expression, made with 2 raisins and a single frozen pea. You tip your hat to it. Back inside, your house greets you like an old, cold friend. The hallway's dark. The upstairs windows are fogged over from within. You peel off layers one by one, each letting go with a reluctant rustle. The fire in your own hearth has long since gone out, but you don't bother relighting it tonight. You're too tired. Instead, you fill a hot water bottle with what can only be described as aggressively warm water from the kettle and wedge it into the bed like a treasure. As you slide under the covers, still wearing your wool socks and jumper, your thoughts wander back to the pub, to the terrible jokes, the clinking mugs, the lady who insisted on knitting, frost cozies for beer bottles, to the way everyone sat so close you could hear each other's teeth chatter. That's the thing about the pub. It doesn't pretend to fix anything. It doesn't melt the ice or solve the fuel shortage or magically unfreeze your pipes. But it offers pause, a place to be cold together instead of cold alone. And in a winter that feels like it might never end, that's enough. Tomorrow you'll rise early, scrape ice from the inside of your windows, boil water to wash, queue again for coal, check again for bread. Try to keep your spirits above freezing. But tonight, for just a few hours, you remembered what it's like to sit beside other people, to raise a glass, to laugh, even when everything aches with cold. The storm outside still rages, but inside your mind there's candlelight and clinking glasses and a single glowing ember that hasn't quite gone out. While your fingers are stiff and your boots are cracked, and the garden gate has vanished beneath a snowdrift that now resembles a small glacier, someone else is shivering too, just a few miles away, in a very different building, the Houses of Parliament. Yes, even Westminster is cold, not metaphorically, though fair enough, but literally. The radiator systems in parts of the Palace of Westminster are frozen. The ancient stone walls designed to impress and endure are now acting like a national icebox. MPs in scarves, lords in overcoats, civil servants typing with mittens. It's as if the entire machinery of government has been turned into an underfunded Arctic expedition. You read in the paper that one particularly grand committee room is so cold, a jug of water developed an ice crust mid-meeting. No one dared break it. One minister simply stared at it for an hour like it might offer budgetary advice. In another department, A junior aide allegedly toasted crumpets over a candle. His superior reportedly borrowed a desk lamp and used it to heat his hands instead of his paperwork. There are whispers of deals being made not over cigars, but over hot water bottles. One MP is spotted sneaking a thermos into the Commons. He takes a sip mid-debate. The Speaker raises an eyebrow. No one objects. Politics slows to a glacial pace, literally. The heating budget becomes a real issue. Debates over the economy now begin with complaints about the draft. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is seen wearing a third scarf, one of which, an aide notes, might belong to the opposition. The Prime Minister delivers a speech with a visible puff of breath after every line. No one can focus on the content. They're too distracted, wondering whether the frost on his eyebrows is real or rhetorical. Outside Parliament, civil servants form impromptu hot drink stations. Office chairs huddle near radiators like nervous animals. Files go missing, only to be found days later used as insulation behind the clerk's desk. Government memos are now issued on blue paper with a header, "Keep calm and layer up." There's even a rumour, unconfirmed but delicious, that the Foreign Secretary tried to defrost a frozen desk drawer using a diplomatic hairdryer gifted by the Swedish ambassador. And yet, through it all, the machine sputters on. Barely. Back in your own home, it's a strange comfort knowing that even those who make the rules can't escape the freeze. That up in those lofty halls with their chandeliers and committee rooms, they too are fumbling with matches and banging radiators with spoons. The radio says a motion was raised yesterday about the coal shortage. It was seconded by a man wearing 2 waistcoats and a hat indoors. Progress was made slowly, and possibly with chattering teeth. Later that evening you picture them all huddled together in the Commons, noses red, debating something minor like road salt allocation, with a passion usually reserved for war. You hope someone brings them soup. Because while the speeches drone and the snow still falls and Britain remains blanketed in white, it's oddly comforting to know even power can't stop a frozen pipe. Of course, it was only a matter of time before someone in Westminster tried to spin the freeze. By mid-February, official statements begin floating out, wrapped in thick bureaucratic wool. The kind of phrases that don't keep you warm, but do keep the press office busy. The government remains vigilant during this period of atmospheric anomaly. We're exploring robust measures to ensure equitable coal distribution across regions of concern. While some local disruptions persist, national unity and stoicism are at an all-time high. Stoicism. That's the word they keep using, as if Britain's collective frozen eyebrows and chilblains are somehow policy. Still, there are gestures. A speech is broadcast, filmed in front of a roaring fireplace so large it could roast an entire ox, and might have, had it not been in a ceremonial hall that hasn't been warm since 1867. The Prime Minister appears in a smart overcoat, eyes blinking slightly too much, voice echoing in the icy air. This frost may numb our fingers, but not our resolve. A nice line, if you ignore the fact that half the nation is watching while sitting on a hot water bottle, made of an old gin bottle and a sock. You and your family huddle by the radio, passing around a mug of something warmish. The sound crackles with static, but the message is clear. We're all in this together. Even if some of us are in slightly warmer drawing rooms, still the gestures grow. Extra coal rations, if they can be found, are sent to hospitals. Military lorries deliver fuel to remote areas. The BBC sets up special weather bulletins in the evenings, complete with advice like, layer your clothing, avoid unnecessary journeys, defrost your budgerigar indoors. The Queen releases a short message of sympathy. Delivered by a breathless announcer in a scarf, it thanks the public for their perseverance and ends with, Her Majesty's corgis are reportedly well and resting beside the fire. You smile, Even the royal dogs are part of the narrative now. Meanwhile, in Parliament, the cold continues to infiltrate. Session attendance drops, not from protest, but because some simply can't get there. Trains are unreliable, roads are impassable. One lord is said to have arrived by horse and refused to dismount, declaring, "It's warmer up here, thank you." In the canteen, soup replaces everything. Bread is limited to 1/2 per mouth. The hot tap in the men's room has been running for 6 days straight, yet still refuses to emit anything above tepid despair. The only truly warm place, the archives room, built underground, insulated by accident, and now occupied by 3 junior aides and a cat no one remembers hiring. It becomes a running joke on the news, and yet, somewhere beneath the snark, you can feel something else. The realization that this freeze has done more than block roads and burst pipes. It has levelled things, from farms to flats, pubs to palaces. Everyone's feeling it. No matter your status or station, you're living under the same pale sky, watching your breath fog in your own front room. In a strange way, it's made the country feel smaller, closer, because when you're all wrapped in the same wool, sipping the same lukewarm tea, waiting for the same powerless heater to click on, you start to feel a kind of unity. Not the kind sung about in anthems, the kind whispered between cold fingers and passed down in blankets. The first thing you notice is the silence. You step out in the morning and the street, normally echoing with bin lids, shop shutters, barking dogs, is hushed. Snow still lies heavy on the rooftops, the pavements, the parked cars. But there's something else now too, a kind of stillness that feels suspicious. Then it hits you. No post. Again. At first it was occasional, a day missed here or there. Understandable, you thought. The weather, the roads. But now, it's been 5 days. No letters, no bills, no holiday postcards from cousins in Spain, smugly describing oranges in bloom, no catalogues, not even junk mail, which is frankly alarming. You head toward the corner postbox just to check. Maybe something was missed. The box is frozen shut, the slit covered in a delicate lace of frost. Someone scratched into the ice. No hope, no mail. Well then, the posties are trying. You know that. You've seen them. Hunched shapes on bicycles, wrapped in coats 3 sizes too big, pushing through drifts taller than the mailbags. One man trudges door to door with letters in a sack and ice forming on his moustache. Another wears socks over his boots for extra grip, which looks ridiculous but works. There are stories now. A postman in Norfolk commandeering a pony to complete his route. A woman in Derby delivering mail on skis. One chap outside Leeds is spotted dragging a sled full of parcels while being pelted with snowballs by schoolchildren who think he's a festive myth. And in London, the underground mail train, known as the Mail Rail, briefly becomes a hero. Still running, still warmish, still moving mail under the frozen streets like a secret artery. You imagine it now. Carriages rumbling quietly in the dark, bearing birthday cards and overdue bills through tunnels of steam and silence. But above ground, the system's cracking. Mailbags sit unopened in frozen depots. Sorting offices resemble abandoned igloos. Typewriters freeze mid-sentence. The stamp-licking machine, yes, that's a thing, has frozen its little tongue. The newspapers publish articles like "Britain without post, a nation adrift," full of hand-wringing and dashed hopes. The Agony Aunt column receives no letters that week, and instead reprints classic complaints from 1957, including one about a stolen lawn chair. It's not just letters, it's parcels. Aunties can't send knitted socks. Birthday gifts arrive in April. One poor woman doesn't get her engagement ring delivered until 3 days after the proposal. Luckily, the intended says yes anyway, but only after being promised a warm honeymoon somewhere not in Britain. Back at your house, there's one letter you've been waiting for. A reply from your cousin in Brighton. You sent it weeks ago. Carefully written, full of drawings, questions, and a pressed flower that by now has surely turned to fossil. You start checking the doorstep twice a day, just in case. Every knock at the door makes your heart jump, but it's always something else. Never the post. Still, you wait, because that's what people do in this winter. You wait for heat, for letters, for spring, and in the meantime, you write another letter, because even if it never arrives, writing still feels like speaking into the frost and hoping it listens. Eventually people stop expecting the post, not out of defeat, but adaptation. It's one of the quiet miracles of this frozen winter, how quickly routines are rebuilt, how swiftly expectations freeze over, then reshape. Like water taking the shape of whatever it's poured into. Instead of letters, messages are now passed in person. You start to see handwritten notes folded under front door knockers, wedged in milk bottles tucked into mittens. A neighbour leaves you a scrawled reminder on the back of a cereal box. Mum says dinner at 6. Bring jam. Someone invents the snow telegram, a simple message written with a stick in the snow outside someone's house. Your cousin writes, "Hello, you freezing sod," in 2-foot-tall letters on your front lawn. You wave back through the upstairs window with a gloved hand and a grin. The local butcher begins attaching paper slips to meat orders like fortune cookies. "Tell Mrs. Prentice her kidneys are in," one says. Another, "Delayed pigs. Blame the weather." There's an odd sort of poetry to it all. At the bakery, people start pinning community messages to a makeshift bulletin board, just a cork slab hung beside the frosted window. Some are practical, lentils for swap, knock twice. Others affectionate, "To George, hope your fingers are warmer than mine." And one cryptic note simply reads, "We saw the cat again." The post office remains closed. The windows are crusted in ice. The door has a hand-painted sign that says "Back soon," with the "soon" crossed out and replaced by "Maybe May." Still, someone's been leaving tiny snow sculptures on the steps, miniature postmen, each with a satchel carved from ice. It's become a sort of ritual. A new one appears every few days. No one knows who's making them. No one wants to. The mystery is warmer than the answer would be. In town, you overhear talk of people storing undelivered letters in biscuit tins, sorted by name and hope. There's a plan, when the thaw comes, to deliver them all in one glorious cascade, like a dam breaking, like Christmas, Valentine's and Easter all arriving on the same Tuesday. And maybe they will. For now, communication has gone local, immediate. You walk to deliver messages. You knock, you wave. You carry notes in your boot, your sleeve, your hat. In the absence of envelopes and stamps and postal vans that aren't buried in snowbanks, you found something else. Connection. You know more about your neighbours than you ever did. You've seen the look in their eyes when the milk doesn't arrive, when the coal runs low, when the dog won't stop, shivering. And they've seen you, cranky, cold, covered in snow, asking if anyone's got extra tea bags, and yet, somehow, it's enough. One morning, just as the sun lifts over the rooftops and turns every icy chimney into a glowing candle, you spot something strange. A letter, tucked carefully through your door. It's damp, slightly crushed, and months late, but it's here, and for the first time in weeks, your house feels full, not of heat, not of noise, but of possibility. There's a new sound in the neighbourhood. It's not the crunch of boots on snow, or the brittle creak of a frozen fence post, or even the lonely caw of a raven perched on a chimney. No, this sound is wetter, squelchier. It begins slowly but unmistakably. You step outside one morning expecting the usual, breath fogging the air, icicles hanging like glass daggers, snow crusting the doorstep. But the snow is different. Soft, heavy, sagging. And beneath your foot, not the crisp, satisfying crunch you've grown used to, but a squelch. A damp, reluctant squish that sends a chill straight through your boot and into your soul. The melt has begun. It doesn't feel like a victory. Not yet. It feels like the cold's last insult. Snowmen slump. Proud, regal Sir Frostington now resembles a snow puddle in a hat. The grand forts collapse in soggy heaps. Rooftops weep. Windowsills sweat. Gutters groan under the weight of slush and sigh out great gurgles of dirty water. You walk through town as if through a battlefield of fallen frost, and then drip, drip, drip from the ceiling. You look up. A soft brown stain is blooming across the plaster like a slow bruise. It's growing, changing shape by the hour. The roof is leaking. You fetch a saucepan, then another, then a bucket. The thaw doesn't come with trumpets. It comes with wet socks. In houses across the street, people are emptying basins, drying laundry with hairdryers, and poking at ceilings that now bulge like overstuffed dumplings. Wallpaper peels like sunburnt skin. Floorboards moan underfoot. One family finds mushrooms growing behind the piano. The shops open their doors again, but not because things are better, because they have to salvage. In the greengrocer's, a single cabbage sits in a puddle like it regrets surviving. The chemist's has cleared 3 inches of slush from behind the counter. You buy cough syrup, not because you're ill, but because it feels like a kind of hope. And the smell. You hadn't realised how clean the freeze smelled. Pure, sharp, scentless. Now the world smells of wet. Damp coats, old wood, sour carpets. The air is thick with it. Outside, the streets turn to rivers, drains overflow, gutters spew like fountains. You try to cross the road and step into a puddle that goes halfway up your shin. Your boot gurgles as you walk. You spend the rest of the day with one foot squelching and one slightly less squelchy. Some try to be cheerful. At least it's warmer, they say, wringing out their scarves. But there's no cheer in a sagging ceiling. A neighbour's conservatory collapses entirely. The snow had piled there for weeks, quietly, patiently, and now the weight is too much. It goes with a sound like soggy applause, glass tinkling as the beams snap one by one. You help pull out soggy furniture. Someone rescues a dripping teddy bear. No one says much. It's not dramatic. Just wet. And so, a new phase of winter begins. Not the coldest, not the iciest, but possibly the messiest, and certainly the strangest, where the sky's still grey, but the snow now turns to slop beneath your feet, where you don't fear freezing anymore, but collapsing. You trade icicles for buckets, coal fires for dehumidifiers, hope maybe for mops. And yet, underneath it all there's something else. The first hint of an ending, not a grand one, but a slow, damp, slightly smelly one. And for now, you'll take it. You'd think the melt would bring relief, but relief doesn't come with mould blooming in the corners of your ceiling, or with every step in the hallway sounding like you've dropped your feet into a sponge cake. The cold is no longer trying to kill you. Now it's just trying to rot your house from the inside out. Your boots, once crisp with frost, are now permanently soggy. No amount of drying by the fire helps. They just shift from wet to warm wet. You start rotating socks like a military ration system. One pair on, one drying, one abandoned. Outside, the streets look less like Britain and more like a bad watercolour. Slush everywhere. Grey, gritty, with streaks of something that may have once been snow, but now resembles cold porridge. Puddles stretch across entire intersections, reflecting the dull sky and swallowing your will to live with every step. The drains, hopeless. They gurgle, they groan, and eventually they quit. Rainwater, meltwater, bathwater, all merge into one brackish stream that seeps into basements and threatens to turn every cellar into an amateur swimming pool. The town begins to smell different. Earthy, sour, a little fungal. The newspapers call it thaw fatigue. You call it the mildew wars. Back at home, the wallpaper in the stairwell is peeling with dramatic flair. You tug a bit, and a sheet the size of a pillowcase comes off in one satisfying rip. It's now your favourite activity. Casual destruction disguised as renovation. Your mum mutters about black mould and lemon oil. Your dad has declared war on dampness like it's a political movement. He stalks the halls with a mop in one hand and a face like thunder. The dog refuses to go outside, not because of the cold anymore, but because the snow is now sludge and the grass is gone. He just stands at the door, sniffs once and sighs as if to say, "No thanks, I've seen how this ends." And yet, even in the middle of this great national puddle, little signs begin to appear. The ice on the windowsills disappears, not with a scrape, but naturally. You wake up one morning, and for the first time in weeks, your breath doesn't fog in the air above your bed. A tiny green shoot pushes through a patch of mud in the garden, next to a collapsed snowman that now resembles a melting marshmallow with a carrot stuck in its side. At the market, a crate of fresh apples appears, not the withered kind wrapped in newspaper, actual crisp, shiny apples. People gasp. One man cries. Possibly ironically, you spot a woman outside sweeping her step with a kind of reverence. Not snow, just dirt. Glorious visible stone beneath it. She waves at you, you wave back and neither of you slips. A small miracle. And in town, a group of teenagers starts washing their bikes. You watch them, dazed. You didn't even remember what bikes looked like, but the biggest change is in the sky. Not warm, not blue, but brighter. There's a softness to the light that hadn't been there in weeks, the kind that makes shadows gentler, the kind that makes people squint and smile at the same time. The wind still stings, the puddles are still freezing overnight, but during the day the sun sticks around just a little longer, and you realise the worst may be over, not gone, not done, but thawing, bit by bit, brick by soggy brick. You don't trust it at first. The sky's a little too clear. The sun feels a little too warm on the back of your neck. You keep your coat buttoned to the chin, hat on, gloves clutched tight, just in case. But there it is, that unmistakable feeling, the beginning of the end. You step outside and the air smells different, less metallic, less frozen. It smells like mud, like damp earth waking up after a long nap. The snow is retreating, not just slumping, but vanishing. Patches of pavement reappear like lost relics. You spot your front step again. Hello, old friend. The shape of the garden path starts to show, wiggling through what's left of the icy crust. And the noises return. The drip of gutters, the burble of a once frozen drain pipe, the flurry of birds that clearly got the memo before you did. You hear a pigeon cooing from a rooftop and you nearly cry. At the end of the street, a man is washing his car with a kettle and a rag. A child in a bright red coat stomps through the puddles, shrieking with glee. You watch them from your window, sip your tea and realise this is the first day in months you haven't needed the fire lit in the morning. You wander down the high street, taking it all in. The awnings no longer sag under snow. Shop windows, once ghosted with frost, are wiped clean. In the bakery, someone's put out croissants again. Actual croissants. Not crusty snow bread or emergency biscuits. Even the grocer's has flowers in the window, yellow daffodils in a shipped vase. They look a bit shocked to be here, like they showed up to the wrong season, but they're trying. At the library, the doors are open, wide and unapologetic. A handwritten sign out front reads, "Thaw sale, everything slightly damp but still readable." Inside, the radiators hum for the first time in weeks. There's still a bucket catching a slow leak near the periodicals, but no one minds. You breathe in the warm paper smell and feel a muscle in your jaw unclench that you didn't know was tight. Even the people look different. They walk slower now. Not from cold, but from caution. Testing the pavement for ice, yes, but also testing this new reality, as if saying, is this it? Can we come out now? You pass the pub. The Black Otter has its windows cracked open, just a smidge. Enough to let out the damp and let in the spring. There's laughter inside. Proper laughter, not the wheezy kind people do through frozen lungs. You turn the corner and find the park. It's still mostly a field of mud and patchy slush, but there are people in it. Children on the swings, bundled up but moving. A couple sits on a bench, sharing a packet of crisps and blinking into the sun like they've never seen it before. You take a deep breath and smell something miraculous. Grass. Just a hint. Damp, brown, stubborn, but real. And suddenly you realise that the world hasn't just survived the freeze, it's waking up. You get home with a strange energy in your step. Half hopeful, half suspicious, like the weather might still be playing one final trick. The garden gate creaks open with less resistance than usual. The hinges, no longer frozen, move like old joints remembering how to dance. Your footsteps no longer crunch, but sink slightly into damp, forgiving earth. Inside, the house feels lighter. Not warmer exactly, but somehow less oppressive. You unbutton your coat. Not all the way, but enough. The kettle whistles without struggling, and when you look out the window, the sun, yes, actual sun, flares briefly on the glass. You catch your reflection and don't recognise it at first. Cheeks a little pink, not from frostbite but from light. Real, honest-to-goodness daylight. A knock on the door. It's your neighbour, Arthur, clutching a paper bag. "Spring onions," he says, grinning. "Found 'em at the co-op. Thought you'd like some green back in your life." You nearly hug him. Settle instead for tea and the softest biscuit you can manage. Later that day you open the windows. Not for long, but long enough to let the air move. It smells faintly of wet wood, melting tar, and that odd sweet smell pavements give off when the sun touches them again after a long sleep. From upstairs, the tap that once dripped ice has finally surrendered a proper trickle. You stand and watch it for a moment, hypnotised. The sound is tiny, unremarkable, but to you it might as well be music. That night the wind doesn't howl, the windows don't rattle, the floorboards are still cold but not biting. You sit by the fire and realise you've used half as much coal as the day before. You don't mention it aloud, don't want to jinx it. Instead, you read the paper and find headlines you haven't seen in weeks. Roads reopen across the Midlands. First daffodils spotted in Surrey. Train timetables return to almost normal. The page smells faintly of ink and damp, but the ink doesn't smear. You run your thumb across it just to check. In town, the melt has revealed odd relics, objects that vanished weeks ago. A traffic cone, a child's glove, a bicycle helmet filled with rain. People claim to have found entire milk bottles standing upright and untouched, preserved like museum pieces. In one street, someone unearths a snowman's arm, just the stick, still wearing a mitten. And then, one morning, it happens. You step outside, blink at the brightness, and hear something you haven't heard since before the freeze. A bee, just one, darting drunkenly around a muddy flower bed, clearly lost, probably annoyed, but undeniably alive. You watch it, mouth open, and in that moment a laugh bubbles up, not big, not dramatic, but deep and quiet and real. Because it's over, not officially, not completely. There will still be frost on the windows next week, still chilly mornings, Still damp socks and squishy floors. But the worst? That endless, gnawing, grey-white silence. It's gone. The air smells different. The light hits differently. Even your heart beats a little easier. And somewhere beneath your feet, beneath the mud and the melt, the world is turning green again. The melt may have saved your fingers, but it's come for your ceilings. You wake up to a slow, rhythmic sound. Drip, drip, drip. It's not the kettle, not the tap, not even the dog knocking over his water bowl again. It's your roof. You sit up in bed and look up. There, right above your head, is a bloated patch in the plaster, yellowish, sagging, pulsing slightly like it has its own heartbeat. You stare at it for a while, then it bursts, just a trickle at first, then a stream, then a small indoor waterfall cascading onto your pillow, your book, your radio, and your face. You leap out of bed like someone lit a match under the mattress. Downstairs, your parents are already mid-crisis. A saucepan, a teacup, a plastic pail, and what appears to be your mum's best mixing bowl have all been deployed under separate leaks. The living room looks like it's preparing for a rainwater orchestra. The house groans with damp. You can hear it. Floorboards creaking in protest. Wallpaper peeling off in wet ribbons. The slow stretch of the window frame as it warps out of shape. The coal fire hisses as a single drop lands dead centre and sends a puff of smoke into the room. You'd laugh if it weren't your ceiling, and you're not alone. Everyone in town seems to be mopping something, drying something, salvaging something. You visit Mrs. Featherstone 2 doors down and find her kitchen ceiling hanging like a tired balloon. She pokes it gently with a knitting needle and mutters, "It's like living inside a pudding." In the corner shop, the ceiling has already collapsed. A shelf of canned goods now sits beneath a hole big enough to see the upstairs flat. The shopkeeper, ever the pragmatist, has strung fairy lights around it and put up a sign. Mind the drip, 10% off below. Plumbers are booked solid, so are builders. Roofers are rumoured to be bartering their time in exchange for coal and chocolate. Someone starts a black market for tarpaulins. The local library hosts a water damage advice day with an expert from the council who ends up being just a very helpful man with a bucket and a degree in accounting. Everyone becomes a makeshift contractor. You learn how to wedge towels into windowsills, how to poke drainage holes into bulging paint, how to collect leaking water in plastic milk bottles and reuse it to flush the toilet. Every bucket in the house is promoted. So is every dishpan, teacup and flower pot. Mould becomes your new roommate. It creeps across ceilings like an uninvited mural, snakes down walls behind wardrobes, blossoms in corners you'd rather not talk about. You name one particularly aggressive patch Cyril. Cyril has opinions and refuses to leave, and yet there's a rhythm to it now. You mop, you patch, you rearrange the furniture so no one sits directly under anything ominous. You get good at judging drips by sound alone. Drip, drip, splat. Ah, that one's hit the linoleum. Drip, plunk, plunk. The upstairs, bathroom. Again. You don't panic anymore, you expect it. And you're not bitter. Not really. Because after months of silence and stillness and ice, there's something oddly comforting about this chaos. This noisy, messy, sopping wet return to movement. Your house may be leaking from 10 separate points, but it's also alive again. And so are you. You find yourself checking the ceilings less and the windows more. Outside things are still soggy, but they're less dead. The grass is fighting its way back through the muck, sprouting in uneven tufts like a sheep with a bad haircut. The bare trees, once brittle and grey, now shimmer faintly with buds that weren't there last week. You're not sure when it started. Maybe the day the leak slowed. Maybe the day you noticed the smell of damp was finally being outpaced by fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Either way, the house is settling, not drying exactly, but adjusting. The upstairs hallway still echoes with each step, the wallpaper still curls, and Cyril the mould patch is still thriving behind the wardrobe. But you can light a fire now without it immediately hissing from overhead drips. Small wins, the kettle works. The postman smiles again. You don't need 3 pairs of socks anymore. One day you open the cupboard beneath the stairs and find the Christmas decorations. Forgotten in the panic, the tinsel is damp, the paper angels a little wilted, but you hang one anyway. It makes no sense in March, but somehow it feels right. Like a late thank you to the house for not collapsing. Other people are doing the same, digging, patching, rearranging. The town takes on the air of a post-battle clean-up. Not triumphant, but determined. The local cafe reopens with a chalkboard sign. Hot tea, dry chairs, come in. The queue stretches to the lamppost. At the school, kids are allowed back in with wellies and strict instructions not to run on the squishy bits. The radiator in room 3 groans back to life, and everyone cheers like it scored a goal. The thaw has turned your whole world into a renovation project. One neighbour replaces a window that shattered in January. Another finally manages to repaint their fence, a bright, slightly defiant blue. There's even gossip again. Did you hear Norman at number 14 fell through his own stairs, landed in the coal shed, said it was warmer down there anyway? You find yourself laughing with people again, not just at the absurdity of the cold, but at the absurdity of having survived it. Every complaint now comes with a shrug and a cup of tea. At night you walk past houses with windows cracked open, on purpose. Not to let the smoke out, but to let the air in. Clean air. Thawed air. You go upstairs and notice something startling. Your room doesn't smell like mildew anymore. It smells like books and dust and somehow lemon. You open your wardrobe and find clothes you forgot you owned. Still a bit stiff, but no longer icy. The radiator gives off a gentle warmth. The kind that doesn't fight the cold, just wins quietly. You sit on your bed, not shivering, not bundled, just sitting. You think about everything. The icicle inside the kettle, the time the milk froze sideways, the night the loo cracked. You think about the 3 days you wore the same socks and the month you went without seeing grass. And then you hear it. Outside, a lawnmower. Some mad soul has decided it's time to trim the mud patch behind their house. The hum floats through the air like a song from a different season. You lie back and close your eyes. Somehow, this all happened. Somehow, you happened through it. The worst winter in living memory, and your ceiling may still be dripping, but your heart is dry. You can't stop watching your breath. Not because it's visible anymore, it's not, thank goodness, but because you've become used to it. All winter, your own breath was your weather forecast. A thin ghost of steam, bearable day, thick clouds curling from your lips. Better stay in bed. Now though, you exhale, and nothing. Just air. Invisible, unremarkable, warmish air. And yet, part of you misses the drama. You've lived through something enormous, and it's shrinking behind you like a snowbank in the sun. You walk past places that once felt frozen in time. Now they're just wet. Ordinary. The pond where you saw 3 men trying to free a frozen bicycle is now just a shallow puddle with a duck and a crisp packet floating in it. No more frost flowers on the window panes. No more hoarfrost coating every tree-like lace. No more accidentally biting into an icicle instead of your sandwich. You're not ungrateful, not really. But there's a strange silence now, a gap where the winter used to hum. The radio hosts start talking about normal things again. Cricket scores, council budgets, a cat stuck in a chimney. You half expect someone to say, "Remember when the Thames almost froze?" Anyway, on to traffic. At the shops you notice a shift. The shelves are no longer empty at odd angles. Bananas have reappeared, so have lettuces, an actual lettuce. Pale green, a bit overpriced, but proudly sitting there like it never disappeared. The woman at the till catches your eye and says, "First delivery since Boxing Day, imagine that." You can't. Not really, not anymore. Your body remembers the hunger, the cold, the endless layering. But your mind is already moving on. It's how people survive. You forget just enough to keep functioning. Still, you catch yourself doing odd things. Filling the bathtub just in case the pipes freeze again. Saving breadcrumbs. Hiding an extra candle in your coat pocket. You pass someone in the street wearing 3 scarves and a thermal balaclava, despite the balmy 10 degrees. You don't even judge them. That could have been you last week. And then, one morning, something happens that feels like a miracle. You wake up sweating. Not from too many blankets or a malfunctioning hot water bottle, but because the sun is shining directly onto your bed. Real sun. Not the pale, distant winter light, but the genuine article. You throw off the covers and fling open the window. Birdsong, daffodils, the neighbour's kid on a tricycle. The world has moved on, and you're still standing in the doorway, blinking like a survivor who just crawled out of a bunker. You put on the kettle, not because you need to warm your hands, but because you want tea. It's a strange thing, getting back to ordinary. Your boots are still by the door, but your shoes are there too now. Your scarf's on the hook, not around your neck. The tap runs properly. The loo works without groaning. You sit at the kitchen table and realise you don't have to plan your day around survival. You can just plan your day. It begins with a haircut, not yours. You're still a bit too shell-shocked for vanity. But across the street, old Mr. Whitby, who spent the entire winter bundled in 3 coats and a hat shaped like a bear, is now in the barber's chair. The window's wide open, and the barber is humming. You stand there, watching tufts of white hair drift to the floor like snow, and somehow that is what makes it real. Life is creeping back, not rushing, just tiptoeing. There's a freshness in the air that isn't just spring, it's relief. You hear it in the way people chat outside the bakery, in the sudden burst of laughter from the bus stop, in the small chorus of "Morning!" that weren't there in January. Even the streets look brighter. That might just be the lack of soot, or the fact that someone finally cleaned the windows at the post office, but you swear everything has a new sheen. You spend a quiet afternoon in town, and for once you're not carrying anything extra. No thermos, no hot brick, no emergency scarf stuffed into your sleeve. Your shoulders feel lighter, so does your heart. At the market, someone's selling tulips from a bicycle cart. You stop, touch the petals gently. They're real, fragile, bright yellow, the kind of colour you almost forgot existed. The seller grins and says, "Dutch imports, took their sweet time." You buy one, just one, and carry it home like a trophy. That night you make dinner and realise you're not hovering over the stove for heat. The oven is just cooking, not survival equipment, just a kitchen appliance again. The condensation on the window doesn't freeze. The dog finally stretches out on the floor instead of curling up into a tight furry ball. Even the radio seems happier. The music has shifted from sombre strings to cheerful pop you secretly like but pretend not to. You sit on the sofa, bare feet on the carpet, and realise something that nearly knocks the wind out of you. You made it. No, not you alone. Everyone did. Together, separately, chaotically. But still, you. You with your cracked mug and leaky roof. You with your emergency bread crusts and bucket rotations. You with your damp socks and weirdly named mould patches. You, who once chipped ice off the inside of your bedroom wall, are now drinking tea under a clear sky. It doesn't mean the damage is gone. The house still needs fixing. The country still needs fixing. Some things will take months, others Years. But you're through it, and you're allowed to feel proud. Not heroic, just proud. Because for weeks you kept going, kept waking up, kept boiling kettles and lighting matches and hauling water and hoping. That tulip on the windowsill, it's already starting to open. You sit beside it, watch the petals relax into the late afternoon light. And for the first time in a long time, you don't think about the weather, not the forecast, not the frost, not the snowdrifts, just the soft hum of warmth and a sense that somehow you've arrived back in your own life. You don't notice it at first. The fact that no one's talking about the cold anymore. The streets are still damp. Puddles cling stubbornly to cracked pavement. Boots squelch. And yet, something has shifted. People aren't whispering about broken pipes or rationed coal. They're talking about Easter. You pass a group of kids chalking eggs onto the sidewalk, right over the faint salt lines left from the gritting lorries. A woman at the butcher's is asking if they'll have lamb this year. Even your father mutters, "Might try the garden this weekend." You blink. The garden? The last time he tried that, the spade shattered on frozen earth. Now the soil is soft and dark and smells alive. You follow him outside and find a battered packet of seeds in the shed. Half the paper's been nibbled by something. Mouse, probably. But inside are tiny hopeful things. Carrots, lettuce, spinach. You dig alongside him, fingers sinking into mud instead of ice. It feels good. Messy. Grounding. You both pretend it's just routine, but neither of you says out loud what you're thinking. This garden almost didn't make it. The birds are back too. Not just the ragged pigeons who never left, but robins, finches, even the fat thrush that used to nick crumbs from your windowsill. You hadn't noticed their silence until now, but now they sing like they've been waiting for their solo all winter. You head to the park the next day, and it's like someone flipped a switch. Joggers, couples, kids on swings. One man is shirtless, in March, defiantly sunbathing on a bench like he's in the Bahamas. You don't even question it. Let the man have his moment. There's a ripple of optimism you haven't felt in months. People are smiling at strangers again. Old ladies carry shopping without fear of slipping on invisible ice. Even the postman whistles now, on both rounds. You stop at the corner and look down the high street. For the first time it looks like spring. Not just technically on the calendar, but visibly. Tulips in buckets outside the florist. Bicycles reappearing. Someone hanging a banner for the village fete. The cafe has put tables back outside. You sit at one just for the novelty and order something absurd, iced tea. The waitress laughs. You sure? Last month people were drinking hot custard just to stay warm. You nod. You're sure. And then she says something that catches you off guard. Hard to believe that was all just a few weeks ago. You pause. Was it? It feels longer, like the frost was a dream you all shared. A long, bitter, dripping, slightly ridiculous dream, where nothing worked and everything froze and the cat tried to hibernate in the airing cupboard. But it happened, and the proof isn't just in the melted snow, it's in you, in the way you dress more lightly now, but never forget your gloves, in the way you smile more easily, but still check the weather each night, in the way your body remembers. You made it. Through. And now, like that first daffodil, you've stepped out of the cold with just enough softness left to bloom. The funny thing is, no one knows how to end it. A blizzard, you see it coming. A flood, you mop it up. But this slow, quiet melting, it's like waiting for the credits to roll on a film that just keeps trailing off. So people invent their own endings. The baker across the street decides hers is a tray of lemon buns iced with bright yellow glaze. They look like sunshine on a plate, and she gives the first dozen away for free, saying, For reviving, dears. The council declares April 1st Defrost Day. No one's quite sure if they're joking. You get invited to a goodbye winter dinner. Bring your weirdest cold survival story. One woman tells of sleeping in her bathtub because it was the warmest place in the house. A man claims he made a functional heater from spoons and biscuits. Everyone laughs, even if it's not quite believable. You realise that laughter has become the new warmth. The newspapers publish photo spreads of the worst icicles, the most frozen trousers, the infamous upside-down milk bottle someone captured mid-freeze. You spot your street in one of the shots. Funny how the scene looks harsher on paper than it felt at the time, or maybe you've just grown tougher since then. You open a journal you abandoned in mid-January. The last entry is bleak. No water, bread gone, socks still wet, might never be warm again. You smile and scribble underneath. Water came back, bread returned, socks dried. I survived. The very next morning you decide to do something brave. You hang the washing outside, not in the spare room, not over the radiator. Outside. It flaps gently in the breeze like bunting for a festival no one planned. Just clean sheets waving at the sun, and you swear. Across the fence, your neighbour gives you a solemn little nod of respect, like you've planted a flag. Small things feel heroic now. A properly flushed toilet, a warm floor, that first lazy yawn where your jaw doesn't chatter, and yet you carry it all with you. You notice it when you run your hands under the tap and flinch, still checking for ice, or when you turn on the light and half expect the power to flicker out. The habits remain, ghost-like. You're not the same person who entered the cold. No one is. The Great Freeze has become a sort of folklore. Kids talk about it like a legend. When Mum was young, the rivers froze and people skated to school. You overhear a little boy in the sweet shop telling his sister that his coat is anti-frost certified. He sounds like a knight bragging about his armour. Maybe that's what you all became in a way. Weather-worn knights, not slayers of dragons, but slayers of drafts. There's pride in the discomfort now. The story gives meaning to the suffering, and when someone says, "Remember when the loo cracked?" everyone laughs. Not because it's funny, but because it's done, finished, melted, survived. You walk home that evening under a pinkening sky, the breeze warm against your face, and just before you turn in, you do one last thing. You take down the bucket, the one you used to catch leaks, to haul water, to flush the loo. It's done its job. You clean it, quietly, and tuck it away in the shed, just in case. But this time, it's not fear that makes you keep it. It's memory. You never imagined the end of a winter would feel like a festival. There are no fireworks, no parades, but every daffodil feels like confetti. Every pigeon's coo sounds vaguely like a trumpet, and every shared look in the street carries that same unspoken cheer. We're still here. The postman whistles a different tune now, one with a little swagger. The grocer set out a barrel of apples with a chalkboard sign that reads "Tastes better unfrozen." The train station, once a cave of frozen breath and cracked timetables, smells faintly of flowers again. You decide to walk home a longer way, just to see things, not to assess snow piles or check for fallen lines, just to look. You pass the churchyard, where the last stubborn patch of snow clings to the shade like an old man refusing to leave the pub. Kids poke it with sticks, disappointed it hasn't vanished yet. One of them suggests bottling it for next year. Another claims it's magic. They argue like scientists at a very silly conference. You pause and smile. Further along, the river has lost its sharp edges. It flows again, lazy and brown, no longer a battlefield of broken ice. A pair of swans drift by, graceful, annoyed, as if to say, "Finally, our lake back." You sit on a bench and take in the air. No bite, just breath. And now, finally, you let yourself remember. Not just the frost, But the feelings, the cabin fever, the tiny victories, like when the kettle boiled on the first try or when you found that single fresh egg behind the potatoes, the ridiculous things you wore, the even more ridiculous things you said. The warmth wasn't just returning, it was earned. You think of Mrs. Hargrave who knitted hats for every child in her street, of the teenager who sledded groceries to an elderly neighbour every day, of the man who opened his pub not for pints but for warmth, company and soup. And then there were the moments of quiet courage. You lighting that final match when your hands shook. You pouring warm water over pipes in the dark. You choosing to laugh when the ceiling dripped on your only dry chair. You didn't win medals, but you endured. You adapted. You learned that humans are stubborn, scrappy creatures, capable of wrapping a potato in tinfoil and calling it dinner, capable of melting snow just to flush the loo, capable of singing out of tune just to cheer someone up. You also learned that hot water bottles are the most underrated invention in history. You get up from the bench and stretch. Spring sunlight plays across your sleeves, and for once, you don't mind that your coat's a bit too warm. You pass a pub with its door propped open. Inside, a chalkboard reads, "Survived the freeze, come tell your tale." You almost go in. Almost. But you're not quite ready to share it all out loud. Not yet. For now, it's enough to walk home under a blue sky, feeling the softness of air that doesn't sting your throat. Enough to glance at your house and not feel dread, but comfort. You step through the door and leave it open for a moment, just to let the warmth in. You take your time tonight. There's no urgency, no need to huddle, to ration, to race the sunset. Instead, you move slowly, deliberately, like you're rehearsing what normal used to feel like. You light a single lamp, not because you need it, but because you like the glow. The silence around you is different now, no longer ominous, but gentle, the kind that wraps around you like a quilt. In the kitchen you boil water just for tea, not for warming bottles or defrosting cans or fighting frostbite, just tea. You sip it while leaning against the doorway, looking out into the quiet street. Across the road, someone's washing their car. A few houses down, someone's mowing the lawn for the first time in months. The scent of cut grass floats up like a perfume from another season. It feels strange, luxurious even. You place your cup down and wander the house. There are still patches that need fixing, stains, cracks, signs of battle, but they feel different now. Less like wounds, more like scars, and scars are just proof you've healed. You stop in the hallway where your coat still hangs, heavy and worn, its pockets filled with ancient tissues and emergency biscuits. You run your hand across the sleeve, and for a second, you remember how it felt to step into it each day like armour. You leave it hanging. You don't need it tonight. Instead, you slip into something lighter and sit near the window. The moon is pale and soft. The clouds drift like they have nowhere urgent to be. You breathe in, and the air isn't icy. It's fresh. And in that stillness, something settles. The Great Freeze of 1963 didn't just test your pipes, your patience, or your pantry. It tested you. It asked you, in the quietest, coldest ways, will you give in? Or will you adapt? You adapted. You learned how to live with less and give more. You learned the power of a neighbour's knock, a kettle's whistle, a bucket splash. You learned that hardship can make people smaller, but it can also make them kinder. You glance at the tulip in your windowsill. It's open now, wide and unapologetically yellow. Outside, a fox pads silently across the road, tail flicking. You nod at it like an old acquaintance. You both survived. The heater clicks once, then hums quietly. You don't even flinch. You close your eyes, and your mind drifts not to the icicles or the wind or the frozen socks, but but to the sound of laughter over lemon buns, to the first robin's song. To that moment the light returned through the window and you believed, for the first time in weeks, that things would be okay. They are. The cold came and went, but you're still here. And tomorrow you'll wake up and forget to check the weather first thing. And that perhaps is the final triumph. So now you lie there, wrapped in something soft, not out of necessity, but comfort. The storm is far behind. The ice has melted. The frost no longer claws at your windows. The great freeze is over. Your breath is steady. Your heart is quiet. The world has slowed, and the sounds outside are only the faint hush of trees in the breeze, the creak of an old pipe now at peace. You remember how it felt to survive something uncertain, not through grand acts of heroism, but through patience, resourcefulness, and the smallest choices repeated each day. You didn't shout at the storm. You whispered back, "I'm still here." And now, as your body softens into the mattress and your eyes begin to close, you carry something no cold can touch, a warmth born from within, earned, honest, unshakable. Let the night wrap around you like a well-loved coat. Let the silence soothe what's still aching. Let the memory of snow drift quietly to the edges of your thoughts, like dust settling on old boots. You're safe. You're home. Sleep deeply now.